Welcome back, Red Spotters, to Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host, Alexis Soto, joined by David Francisco. We're back together again, back more than just me, and back on video here. Red Spotlight, the place that brings you all the latest news coming out of the world of movies and more. And listen, we've been away for a bit. We've been getting lost in the unknown regions with Ahsoka, and it turns out there was nothing there to be seen. If you want to know more about that, feel free to watch our reviews. But what a colossal disappointment if there ever was one. And there have been plenty of them from across the years that we've talked about on this show. But there it is. As far as what we're talking about here, well, it's going to be a little bit more of what I have been discussing in the last 2 weeks on my own. But now that I have an actual body here next to me, we might have a little bit more some thoughts here to say. I'm sorry to say that we could not get some others to join us tonight, but as has been mentioned ad nauseum, they are unbelievably busy. While I did miraculously have the company of one Peter Martinez to see Killers of the Flower Moon yesterday, unfortunately, he has to literally learn a whole new curriculum by Monday so he can be examined that same day. So what a torture chamber it is, I guess, to be in that program. But anyway, he could not be here with us tonight, unfortunately. So we will be talking about Marty's new movie, Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, and Robert De Niro, and many more. There's a lot to say about that film, and we'll get into it on this show here today, as well as what we have not yet discussed alongside David, which is the shakeup that was announced last week of Marvel Television. Are you okay, David?
Yeah, okay. Somehow I got disconnected from my camera. Don't know why. Really?
A little bit, and you were like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already happening. We're just a bit into the show, and things are happening. But that's how we're gonna do things tonight here on Red Spotlight. Yeah, Daredevil went down the tube, starting over from scratch. I guess Loki's back on, and we may have some things to say. There's a new Spider-Man game that is evidently catching the imagination of video gamers.
Ooh, yeah, I've been playing that.
All over the nation. So, and of course, we may have some other comments to add on to. Where in the world is the state of physical media? All that and more as I'm looking at my camera to see what the hell is going on with the show here on Red Spotlight. We're back in it, guys. We're back in it, and it not a moment too soon, it seems. Again, as I have been saying for many weeks on end at this point, that there had been quite a lack of really new stories to talk about, whether not just from news stories, just like shows and movies. Really, we're so used to having something to talk about, and it's been quite of a dry spell. You could blame it, sure, on the strikes. I'm sure that has a big part to play in what happened, but let me just tell you something. I don't recall there being an August, September, and October this fucking lame in quite some time. Like, over at least 10 or 15 releases, new releases, that just continuously were like, for all sorts of reasons. And of course, sure, I would have loved to have seen a new Exorcist film in October. That's a brilliant release date. Too bad you got the guy that made the horrible Halloween films to do it. And guess what happened? The reviews were as awful as they were to have been expected. So we made the choice to not acknowledge the film's existence. And I feel better off for it. I could have, and we could have been talking about for weeks on end about Last Voyage of the Demeter, Gran Turismo, the Expendables 4, Strays, just a bunch of awful or creator or very half-rate unoriginal, boring schlock. Now I don't know what David has been up to, and to be fair though, to the boring schlock, we did give a lot of airtime to Ahsoka, so you can't say that necessarily was us being discriminatory. At least not completely. We did give so much airtime and attention to Ahsoka, and I feel maybe on some level that was a bit too much to really do at the end of the day. That being said, what I have been doing is learning about all the new films that I've already discussed on the show that are going to come to us at the end of the year, that are, you know, the kinds of films that are prestige movies that are, you know, have premiered at all those festivals, Telluride, Venice, Toronto, among many others, that will be receiving nominations, that will be receiving, more likely than not, accolades. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been learning more about, you know, what those films are, who they are from, ultimately how it's shaping up to be, the race and everything. And may I just stop there to address something that I haven't had the chance to address yet on here, and that is it concerns the Golden Globe Awards. I have said for many years now on this show that the Golden Globe Awards are, in my view, too minimized, too ostracized, and too many people are too eager to put it out to pasture for accusations that I don't consider baseless, but I do consider to be hypocritical. Because was the now former HFPA that ran that organization. By the way, that organization is no longer in existence because they were bought out earlier this year by Dick Clark Productions. So there's a whole new team. Tim Gray from Variety is now in charge, and they've been making a whole bunch of different. There's a whole new approach. They kicked out a lot of their membership. They brought in new membership. There's now, because the HFPA was a voting block of like 80 some people. Now there's like 300, 400 voters. So there have been significant changes to the voting base. But that's what's new. The HFPA was a corrupt institution, but I think what a lot of us respected about them is that they were very open and forthright in them being openly bought and paid for. Whereas many of the other institutions, or I guess organizations, pretty much did the same thing, not to the same extent, but they kind of more or less played the same thing, and they're equally as corrupt in other areas. And we've spent years and years on this show talking about the politics behind these games. That again, award shows, what are award shows? How can we put up many different pieces of art against each other? How does that mean anything? And how is that a fair thing? It never really is fair. Well, it's not just that, but we've talked about many, many years now how if not for the corruption, there, of course, therein lies the stupidity of the general makeup of Oscar voters that discriminate in a variety of different ways. And we've gone into that on the show. But more to the point, the Globes have always put on a better show than the Oscars. And I want to say on some areas have actually delivered better results as far as winners are concerned than the Oscars. For instance, I'm about 7 or so years old when I found out that The Exorcist, the 50-year-old movie, not any of the ones that came after, the original Exorcist, directed by the late, great William Friedkin, who passed away just a few weeks ago, won a lot of awards. A horror movie, mind you, The Exorcist, won a whole bunch of awards at the Globes, including Best Picture Drama. Whereas at the Academy Awards, it won, I think, adapted screenplay and then something else. But it was a big upset because It was considered the front runner. The Exorcist was the first horror film to ever be nominated for Best Picture, which is incredible. And then it lost to a movie called The Sting, which is known, I think, in some circles, but not talked about as often.
I don't
It's
know.
not talked about exactly. It's not as talked about as much as nearly enough as The Exorcist is. Like a lot of people, there's been people have been talking about The Exorcist this year for a lot of reasons. I mean, it has a new film out, which is awful and atrocious, and hilariously, people have been joking that's what killed Freakin' in the first place. Was seeing that movie. Also, there was a new steelbook or physical media 4K release that was ridiculous in its own way because many people hate the cover, and then that made them gravitate towards a steelbook that sold out like that. And that came out just a few weeks before Best Buy announced that they were not going to be doing physical media anymore. So it's just people have been talking about this film, but the point being, it is often remembered as one of the best horror films ever made. But then in and of itself, if The Exorcist was the first horror film to ever be nominated for Best Picture, that just shows you how discriminatory they all are and have been a long time against horror films. But the Globes did that. I'm sorry. That gives the Globes some street cred in my book. If you were able to give The Exorcist Best Picture over anything else. And I don't know. I just feel like as the years have gone by, a lot. I mean, for instance, Babylon got a lot of Globe nominations, and I thought that was pretty cool. Deserved or not, pretty cool. I would think that this year, there would be a number. I think to me, I love covering award season, but one of the reasons why I liked last year's so much was because up until the very end, obviously, but at the beginning, there were different movies winning at different places. And I like that. I like that there are different movies or different, categories that have a different outcome at different shows. I don't want everyone to rubber stamp the exact same set of winners all the way through. So the Globes actually provides some opportunities for people who honestly have no shot at winning at the end of the day at the Oscars. It gives them something, and it gives them a moment, and it gives them a chance for recognition. And what I've been saying is, as far as what the Globes would be able to do, I know a trailer just dropped this week, and we have been looking forward to, since we heard about it a few weeks ago, Emerald Fennell's new movie, Saltburn, with Barry Keoghan and I believe Jacob Elordi. Alexis herself was so riled up by that trailer. She reached out to me. It's like, oh my God. And it looks amazing, but it honestly doesn't have a chance. May not even have a single nomination at the end of the Academy Awards because of how stacked everything else has already been declared to be. But the Globes might actually give it a couple of things. If they gave Babylon a number of nominations, they might be able to give Saltburn some nominations. And I'm sorry, but Saltburn looks like a much better movie than Babylon, which I don't dislike Babylon. I actually happen to enjoy Babylon quite a bit. Although I don't believe it has lived up to my original viewing of since I saw that about a year ago. But all of which is to say is, hey, the Globes sometimes go a different way in different areas. Like with director, this past year, they were one of the only places to actually go with Steven Spielberg over Daniel Kwan and Daniel Schreiner from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Sometimes they do that. And I know a number of years ago, they were one of the only people to actually give it to Martin Scorsese for Hugo, instead of whatever won in 2011. I don't recall who won director that year. That was before my time. I don't. It really was. I didn't actually start like really paying attention to awards season or really movies until like late 2012. That whole season that came with Lincoln, Argo, Les Mis, Django Unchained, Silver Linings Playbook. That's the first like season or Life of Pi was also that year. That was the first year that I actually paid attention to it.
Best picture was The King's Speech. The King's Speech.
That was 2000. Well, technically speaking, the ceremony was 2011. But remember,
2010.
Yeah, so technically
My
that's
bad.
for 2010's year. I know 2011, was it not The Artist? Wasn't it The Artist?
I looked up 2011 and said King's Speech, but 2010, Hurt Locker.
Yeah, that was the year before. Catherine Bigelow's movie and The Hurt Locker, one picture and director.
Yeah. Hurt Locker. What's that one about? I don't remember.
It had Jeremy Renner, and I never saw it. Again, before my time. So I'm not gonna. And people love it, and some don't care for it. But I'm.
Avatar best visuals.
I'm not gonna get in there. But the point is, for me, the Globes have always provided a lot of great opportunities for different kinds of winners, and I've also, in many instances, put on better ceremonies than the Oscars themselves. And I just feel people have this thing against them that they want them to go under, and it's like, well, the thing is, award shows, like everything else, are having to find new homes because cable is failing. People are not watching cable anymore. People are not watching award shows on cable anymore, but people are not watching award shows anymore because they don't care anymore about this. There no longer is, except for some very few exceptions, there no longer this water cooler moment. We're not all watching the same TV show anymore. Maybe one every few years. We're not all watching the same movies anymore. Except it was, again, exceptions like Barbenheimer. But because of this, the interest is not there in cinema. The interest is not there in what's, deemed to be the best of the best, or what critics have to say. There's been a war waged on critics these last 10 years. Why would they care about award shows? The common people who claim to like movies have refused to engage in any of the material that is considered high art, and have closed themselves off because they feel like the stuff that they like and the stuff that they gravitate towards has been closed off and blocked from having a place at these award shows. And, it used to be, for a long time, I was very sympathetic to that. The idea that there are certain kinds of genres that are not, allowed to play in the prestige filmmaking crowd. And to a certain extent, that's true. I just mentioned it with horror movies. The same can be said about comedies and, of course, blockbusters. But again, just because the films that you gravitate towards most don't get recognized does not mean that what is recognized is not worthy of your time. Now, I will say, personally speaking, I think that every single year there's a good 2 to 3 nominees in Best Picture that I feel are wholly unworthy or to dog shit. Like every year, like just this year, there are films like Triangle of Sadness. That's funny.
Sadness.
Triangle did sag in parts. Triangle of Sadness and All Quiet on the Western Front that I were like, what are we doing here, man? I mean, there weren't bad movies by any stretch of the imagination, but like, what? And then also Elvis, which is like, it's a biopic. It's a better biopic. I get it, but Best Picture, okay, nominee. And then again, I can go down all, what other were Best Picture nominees, and some were even winners, like Green Book or Coda. And then there was Bohemian Rhapsody. So again, like there's and by the way, Bohemian Rhapsody was a $700 million, worldwide movie. It was a big blockbuster hit. You know what else was a big blockbuster hit that was nominated for Best Picture? Top Gun Maverick. Avatar: The Way of Water was a Best Picture nominee, and it made like over $2 billion. This idea that popular films don't get nominated. I mean, Black Panther, which I would think is not worthy of a Best Picture nomination, but it got a nomination. Those movies every now and then do get included. Oftentimes, though, I would say it shouldn't have been in the place of something that was far better. Now, I think the Academy or the Film Academy has a better record of this than the TV Academy because, I mean, they kind of went all in on, nominating popular entertainment that I think was not worthy of being nominated. Like, again, I think the first 2 seasons, they nominated The Mandalorian for Best Picture Drama, and it was, and don't forget that last episode with Luke Skywalker in season 2 of Mandalorian was nominated for writing. The best writing and directing of television of that year.
Mm-hmm. No.
Okay. I don't know this for a fact, but I will bet you anything. And I know this already because it wasn't received that way. Think about this. The Mandalorian season 2 got way more nominations at the TV Academy, the Emmys, than Andor.
No, that's bad. Right there.
That's bad. That's bad. And I think it may have even gotten more nominations than House of the Dragon. Again, which is why we're not covering TV this year. I'm sorry, the Emmys. Like, that's why it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I'm rambling at this point, but the thing is, award shows are losing ratings. People are not watching them. That's why, they're trying to do whatever they can to get people back into watching them, but they're taking the wrong approach. If you want people to watch movie award shows, you have to get them back interested in movies. It's what James Gray said. The studios have to band together and force back that interest. They have to be okay with taking risks and actually creating something.
Mm-hmm.
Barbenheimer, both Barbie and Oppenheimer were risks. And guess what? In those instances, they paid off handsomely. Barbie is the highest grossing film of the year. It is the highest grossing movie in the history of Warner Brothers. And do you think David Zaslav, who is currently in charge of that studio, thought for a second that film would be anywhere near? No, he didn't. He thought The Flash would be that for the studio. The Flash cost them over it's a $200 million loss.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, it came out this past week. It came out. They were surprised that people didn't like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. They thought they had a hit on their hands. And you know what? I know that for a fact. When in my theater, they were pushing that trailer 10 times more than they were pushing the trailer for Guardians 3. I'm telling you again and again, this year is changing. I think a lot of people's perceptions, and I think studios themselves are getting a wake-up call in a way they're not used to about what people want and what they don't want, right? Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer being the biggest success in the world, and The Flash and Quantumania, who both of their respective studios and studio heads had so much faith in, backfiring on them in the most humiliating way imaginable. That should tell you something. Now, what I was going to get at is that the Screen Actors Guild Awards, they had to have their ceremony streamed on YouTube this year because TBS kicked them out. They didn't want to put them on anymore. And they made a deal with Netflix that this coming year, they're going to stream their show on Netflix. The future of award shows is that streaming. The Golden Globes have not found a home yet. NBC was like, after last year, you know what, guys? I think we're good. Okay, so, and I think the new people were saying it's looking like we're just going to have to stream on YouTube the Golden Globes show. Okay, I mean, as long as they happen still, and there's some sort of production behind it, I'm fine with it. But it is like award shows being kicked off to streaming is related to physical media being further and further phased out, where you have Best Buy and Target in these last few weeks doing a 1-2 hit punch of saying we're only going to have a little bit of it, or we're not going to have any of it at all. And that's connected to right now where a Martin Scorsese film is going to open behind the second week of a Taylor Swift concert movie, which, to be fair, it is not fair at all that in 2023, people had any realistic expectations that 80-year-old Martin Scorsese, who the public has turned its back on, I would say personally, would stand a chance against the biggest pop star in the world, which is Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
So,
sadly, this is a really bad time for this movie to come out.
Yeah. But to be fair, though, I don't think there's a good time for this movie to come out. Like this movie only got made because I think Apple was like, hey, Apple has the money to bankroll Martin Scorsese. The only reason Irishman was made because Netflix bankrolled Martin Scorsese and no other studio, which, again, that's the thing. The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon only exist now was because streamers got in there, bankrolled his movies, but they knew when they bankrolled those films that it would be a loss for them because Scorsese's expensive. And look, my personal viewpoint is he's earned the right to make those kind of expensive films. He's 80, but he's also the greatest living filmmaker and has been. It's a shame that there is no studio or platform out there for aging artists like him to, kickstart the films that they want to make. But this is what it's come to, right? But this whole thing that Scorsese has been speaking about, the idea that the movies that he likes are getting pushed out. It's not just that Marvel films or blockbuster films or action films have come in and pushed other things out. And it's not just that, like, for example, comedy is a genre now that maybe only solely exists on streaming. It's not just that. It's the mid-budget drama. The only way you get that now is there's a mini-series version of that on a streamer, or it doesn't get made, period. That's the problem. His own films, his own career has been has been delayed to an extent because no studio out there wants to throw that money away. And the thing is, the studios themselves are at blame. They've trained the audience to expect a number of things. They've trained the audience to expect that blockbusters are the only thing worth their time, that franchises with cinematic universes are the it girl. And they've also, with their advent into streaming, have trained these same audiences into expecting a certain number of their lower tier releases. Oh, why would I pay for this in a movie theater when I can just wait a couple of months and see it there anyway, or pirate it once a good copy of it comes there anyway? So it's like the studios have been doing it to them. It's like an animal that's eating itself. This industry has been literally stabbing itself for like 15 years now. And it's like all of a sudden they've realized, fuck. What do we do?
Yeah.
So this is a long way of me saying that the Globes are going to be streamed this year, and it's sort of tied into award season. But I just want to put it out there that none of these stories are in a vacuum. They're all connected, right? Which is, I think, if we can, David, let's go ahead and transition. One of the first things we can transition from here on into would be physical media. So before we do that, I wanted to ask you, because I've gone on for half an hour already ranting about this. And by the way, I apologize for those who are listening, but it is what it is.
I mean, most of it, the blame is me. I'm not much of a talker. I know that's so weird to say in a podcast, but literally, I don't know. Just nothing. You talk, not just you, anyone who ever talks to me, all I can do is just listen. It's not that I don't have thoughts or anything. It's just nothing comes out. It's just so weird. I don't know why. This has always been a struggle for me.
Well, I gotta address it because I know that some of my closest friends, who oftentimes act like bitter mortal enemies, will joke casually behind my back that I talk over you and I run over you and I don't give you a chance to speak. And yes, my mouth runs on. And, at times I do catch myself. Before I move on, you notice how I was about to go to a different, subject. But I wanted to give you the opportunity. I always try and give you the opportunity at the end of my half-hour rants to give you a moment to chime in on, but it's not fair to you because I say so much. By the time I ask
Yeah.
you questions, it's like, whoa, where do I start?
No, I definitely did try to like more to like kind of just say something like, "Oh, you brought up something. I can probably talk about it." But like again, it's just I don't know what it is. I just kind of like you talk, and I'm okay with just listening. I get it's so weird for me to for someone like me to say that on a podcast format, you know. But I don't know. It's always a struggle. But I try.
Did you want to chime in on anything that I've been talking about? Because you've been listening for half an hour, supposedly. So is
Yeah.
anything that stood out to you?
No, I'm just like the parts of like what studios can do to kind of get people back into movie theaters, into like actually watching something new and all that. And I think for one thing, the first step is just stop nominating the big blockbusters. As much as I love Top Gun Maverick, you could have given it to someone else. I mean, if there was a movie that was better, I can't remember what else came out that year, but if there is something better out there for sure, other than those big blockbusters. I know there were some other movies better than Black Panther 2. I can admit that. And
Well, it's because
because
of this. I'm gonna place two clips right now of one of the things I shared with you. Ultimately, all this speaks to an audience that is so disconnected with reality, in my view. Like people are just so, and I've been saying this for a long time now. They no longer have an intellectual curiosity. They've walled themselves off into their own little islands, and they've lost touch with reality on anything regarding art or creativity. And they don't even realize it themselves when they tell on themselves. So go ahead. While I look up those videos, go ahead what you were saying.
oh yeah, but just like the first step is to get the movies that usually deserve an Oscar nomination and all that back into their award shows and all that, because that was always the only way for them to at least for not the big blockbusters. That was always the only way for them to get some kind of recognition. So, as soon as they see the DVD, going back to physical media, as soon as they see the DVD and says Oscar nominated movie right there, then they kind of go, okay, if it was Oscar nominated, it's got to be for a reason. And yeah, some of those, it's maybe not everyone will find them entertaining or anything like that, but at least it gets eyes on it and everything. I remember what was the movie? Oh, I can't remember the name of it, but you remember the one about a guy who goes back into his town. He doesn't really want to because his brother died, and like he had to go back to his hometown because he had to take care of his nephew. I mean, that's very vague. I feel like you could probably list off like 50 of them. That could really be any movie. Wow! Oh my gosh! Let me see.
I don't know. I mean, it would help if you gave it a year and maybe an actor or a director. That would help a lot.
I am so bad with names, though. That's the thing. I think it's. Oh my god! Wow.
Well, let me just say this about what you were saying there about the blockbusters and everything. Well, look, a few years ago, the Oscars tried to implement a best popular film. They got a big backlash. They dropped it. Then 2 years ago, they squeezed this thing in. They basically did an online poll, and then they used a ceremony to present it, and it ended up being Zack Snyder's Justice League that won, which was hilarious. One of the hilarious moments of that telecast. And it still ended up humiliating them because they had no reality. Yeah, an online poll. I wonder which cult would win that particular war. But then it ultimately manifested earlier a few weeks ago when it was announced that at the Globes, this new ceremony happening in January, they're going to add in a new category called Best Box Office Achievement and have 8 nominees in it. And I'm like, I don't know how this will last, but I have a conspiracy theory as to why that was enacted. Well, for one, clearly, the optics of it help. I know Tim Gray, probably, he's an older gentleman. I've seen him on podcasts, so I know him. I know of him. He probably has the idea in his head that this is going to help get eyeballs onto the show, which is what they need. They need the show to be relevant, so they have to do something. But I'm also of the mind where it would be a pretty bad look if they don't give Barbie an award, particularly because this show, unlike all the others, splits. They have two Best Picture prizes. They split it off into drama and then also comedy musical. Now, of course, one of the ongoing hilariousness, antics, shenanigans, hypocrisies, whatever have you, of the Golden Globes is oftentimes the winners for Best Picture comedy musical are not comedies or musical. Like one of the most iconic moments for me was when Ridley Scott went on stage and accepted his award for The Martian for Best Picture comedy, and he literally said to the mic, "Comedy," which was so like literally like that.
That's
So I
funny.
mean, it's funny and it's hilarious and it's stupid, but I mean, hey, The Martian won something, so that's great
Yeah,
because The Martian is a great movie.
for
So
sure.
that there kind of makes my point there. So my conspiracy theory is Barbie is the biggest box office achievement of the year. They want to give it something, and I don't think it's gonna win in the comedy musical. Again, personally, I don't consider Barbie a flat out comedy. It's
Mm.
more musical than it is comedy, actually, if you think about it. I mean, there
Yeah.
are comedic moments in Barbie, but I would not put it in that box of like
Right.
being a comedy.
Mm.
But again, you think in an otherwise, weaker year, which this is not, by the way, in a weaker year would have won this category on a walk. But um it probably is not because a film that is probably has a better claim to being titled a comedy, but still not a full blown comedy. And I'm not sure if you've seen previews or trailers of this. They're out there now of the new Emma Stone film, written and directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, who also did films like The Lobster and The Favorite. This is Emma. Did I say Emma Thompson or Emma Stone?
Stone. I think you said
Yeah,
Stone.
Emma. Yeah, I hope I didn't
Yeah.
say Thompson. Sorry. This is Emma Stone, Mark Ruffalo, and Willem Dafoe. It has a little bit of a Frankenstein
Mm.
element to it, but it just and I've seen images and oh my god, it just looks like the most gorgeous film ever and one of the best like twists or takes on a story. And I totally see, and it already is cementing itself as a beloved film that has a chance to win so many prizes, that I'm thinking Poor Things is probably going to, and I think it has a bit of a feminist um, identity unto itself, which is also kind of Barbie's turf too. So I'm thinking, what's a likelier outcome? Barbie wins or Poor Things? And Poor Things is also backed by Searchlight Pictures, which they have already won Best Picture a number of times, including, I believe, The Shape of Water and Moonlight. So there's a good team backing them. So I think, like, to me, this gives them an opportunity for a best of both worlds where they get to give Oppenheimer, because that's going to win drama, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Barbie 3 Best Picture prizes. And I got to say, I'm not mad at that. Like, I could be. Like, the whole idea of a best box office achievement, I think is kind of a stupid idea, but I can't bring myself to be angry at it
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many more things to be angry at. Like, I will play this, and again, how we did it last time, I'll just send you these clips and you can put them
Yeah.
in post. But real quick, did you have anything to say on what on my conspiracy theory about like what's this
Uh,
whole box office award at the Globes?
Actually, I remembered the movie that I was talking about.
Mm.
I was talking about Manchester by the Sea. That one,
Oh yes,
that one,
yes.
it was Oscar nominated and everything. And I told my dad, and when I saw it, I told my dad, I was like, yeah, it's Oscar nominated. Like that's kind of like the only way I could convince him to watch it, and I was very interested. But afterwards though, he was just kind of like, oh yeah, it was cool, that. But I was kind of like, this is kind of cool. Like this is really great. I don't know why.
I haven't seen that one, and I want to see it.
Really,
Manchester by the Sea. Yeah,
it's
I
very
know.
interesting. It's very
I
interesting. I really liked
missed
it.
it when it came out their year. I feel like between 2016, 17, and 18, there were a number of films. For whatever reason, I just didn't get a chance to see it. I need to go
Mm-hmm.
back and make that and put that on my list. But
Mm-hmm.
what was it called? Um, yes, Manchester by the Sea won. I think also Best Actor for Casey Affleck. But you know, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because Manchester by the Sea is an Academy Award winning and nominated film. you have to also, take that with a grain of salt, because you know what else is an Academy Award winning movie? Cruella and Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
You know what is not? Banshees of Inisherin and The Fabelmans and Tar. So you gotta keep in mind, like, okay, what did they win for, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you could say that Manchester was nominated, yeah, but Suicide Squad won an Academy Award.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, they should try to get stuff more like Manchester by the Sea to get them nominated as much as they can and all that, because that's just the only way they can get interested. And but then also, like, when you pit movies like Manchester, what's another one? Like Three Billboards, what's the
Shape of Water?
Yeah, you knew exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those ones, when you put them against each other, it's just a lot more fun to kind of see, like, okay, who is gonna win? Because it is kind of like, okay, maybe this could win because of the artistic side of it, maybe this won't win because of the acting side of it and all that. Like, it's just, that's kind of how you get the audience going and all that. Also, make your show entertaining, and I don't mean by like, well, no, I want you to say just entertaining, but like, focus on the movies.
Yes. Instead of all the bullshit that happens off to the side.
Yeah, we don't need, obviously make some funny jokes, either about the movie, or maybe they know some little gossip of funny things that happen behind the scenes and all that. Tell the people that. I don't know.
To be clear, I think Manchester was competing in the race against Moonlight and La La Land, which was an uphill climb for that movie, I would say. For sure. It probably would have been better if it came out in 2018, because that was I mean, what a crap storm of a year that was. I feel like every time I wonder, we'll see what happens this year. I don't think it'll stick, because there hasn't been a film yet that I've seen gotten a lot of praise that could be in the company of Green Book or Coda. But every time there's a truly, like, a film that is, like, noted as, like, an achievement in filmmaking wins, there's kind of a backlash. So when Moonlight won, then came Green Book. Parasite won, then came Coda. So we just had Everything Everywhere All at Once win. What's the next Coda? What's the next Green Book? Which is like run-of-the-mill, safe, basic stuff. Which is why some might think, now I hate putting this movie in the same company as Green Book or Coda, because this is actually being received very well, and it's actually a beloved movie from what I'm hearing across the board. But the film that comes closest to what those other movies I mentioned feel like is the Holdovers.
Oh,
yeah. It comes the closest to, but I wouldn't put it in the same company, because I've been hearing actually really great things about Holdovers, and that's a film that I'm really, really much looking forward to.
Same.
What was I gonna say? But yeah, we'll see how all this stuff works right now. But again, as far as that is concerned, no one really has a clue. Like, I would think people still are saying Oppenheimer or Poor Things, but we're still in that phase, like, we don't have a clue who's gonna win. We're in the part where we're trying to, like, game out which ones are gonna get nominated or not, which, again, this time last year, most people thought Glass Onion would get a Best Picture nomination. Didn't happen. Anyway, let me get to these idiots. I'm going to go ahead and play these videos. What do they call it? Viewer discretion is advised. These clips are quite stupid.
All right, just got out of Killers of the Flower Moon. My guy Jersey Jerry. Horrible! This movie is 3 hours and 45 minutes. Could have been 2 hours less. Wasn't particularly interesting. There's some plot lines that are okay. Acting's all right. way too long. And the ending to the movie, I think they were trying to make a 5-hour movie. One of the weirder endings you'll see, just the way they try to put a bow on everything, is terrible. I think it's coming out tomorrow, technically. You got better things to do with your 3 hours and 45 minutes to see this. This guy fell asleep at some point during the movie, storing the whole thing. I don't blame him. Stunk.
That's one. Here's two.
Then I think Martin Scorsese movies are like going to the DMV. I get it. There's a purpose. There's a reason I'm here. I got to renew my license.
You got to do it every once in a while.
I got to do it every once in a while. It's never not been tedious. Yeah. And yeah, Wolf of Wall Street's really fun for an hour. And then you pause it to go to the bathroom and you realize you got 2 more hours. And then it's brutal to get through. That's how this movie is, but it's not even fun.
Here's another one.
Really understood the argument that, you know, the only good cinematic movies that you can have are 3 hours long and boring.
Mm-hmm.
I've just never understood that argument. I don't understand why we can't have both. Across the Spider-Verse is an amazingly well-written, long, good movie, but it is also entertaining, has good action, has good comedy. Like, I don't understand why certain people only judge movies. I understand not judging movies based on only how entertaining they are. Meg 2's entertaining and at parts, you know, fast movies are entertaining, but you can make the argument that they're not good movies because they don't do a lot of stuff well, right? I don't understand why movies that are written well and have a good plot, that's the only thing that matters. Nothing else matters. If it's written well and there's a good plot, then it's good. That's one thing that's good in a movie, but I don't understand why we can't judge it on both. Like, you can have an entertaining movie that also has good acting and also is cinematic and is deep and has good character development and all that, but you can also have us just not be bored.
Yeah.
It seems like a requirement for good movies is that it bores a lot of people. And I think that that's just certain people being like, well, I understand it and you don't, and you're not as good as me. I've never understood that argument. I just want movies to have both. I want to care and be emotionally invested in the characters and want it to be well written, but also just be entertained and laugh and see some cool stuff.
And that's why your 2 favorite movies are?
I cut off there, but he was going to say that his favorite movies are The Avengers and The Greatest Showman.
Oh, that... The Greatest Showman was fine, but I would not put it on top. Just... Yeah. On
listen. No, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
That first video, okay acting? I find it hard to believe with the amazing cast that's there. And I don't know, I feel like Martin Scorsese has a good eye on good acting. Like, yeah, I find that weird. I can't remember the second clip. What did they say? Oh, the DMV thing.
Yeah.
That's just a weird analogy. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like a...
He was saying that being boring is a requirement of being considered a really good movie. Which, listen. Everybody has their personal taste, right? Everybody has every right to like what they like in film and to an extent avoid what they've already determined is not for them. That being said, that is all that can exist in the same thing that I said earlier, which is people who do not have any sense of intellectual curiosity. Why? There are people out there that just flat out say, or just shut themselves off from a film if it's animated. They just say, oh, I don't do animation. Or I don't do horror. Or, oh, I don't do rom-coms. Or I don't do superhero movies.
Yeah.
And personally, I think all of you are wrong. I think you all are wrong. It doesn't matter what. And by the way, Scorsese has never said that, you know, comic book films are trash. He always said that he's seen them, but they're not for him. That's a difference, though. He has seen them, and they're not his favorite, which is different than others who will not see something because of the genre it belongs to, like musicals. How many of you actually saw In the Heights or West Side Story? None of you actually saw those, and those were good films. I don't blame you for not watching Cats. That was awful, but actually one of the best theater experiences of my whole life. Watching Cats in theaters in 2019 was a better experience than watching Star Wars Episode 9 in theaters, if you can believe that. But hey, there's a musical coming out this year. And there's also a reason why there are not made anymore, because the ones that were made recently don't make any money. Like the last one that made something was La La Land, right? But we have a big musical coming out this year called The Color Purple with Fantasia, with Taraji P. Henson, with Danielle Brooks. It's I think even Halle Bailey is in there for a little bit. Like there's a Coleman Domingo. There's a star-studded cast in this movie. And I'm looking forward to it because I love musicals and I want to see them prosper and I want to see good musicals. But I'm getting less of those because the rest of you will not entertain seeing one. See what I'm saying? See what he's saying here?
Yeah. No, yeah. I remember when you I remember when you sent that clip of Martin Scorsese talking about, stop kind of categorizing low budget movies like by itself or something like that, because like it should be together. And I remember being like, yes,
stop calling them indie films, right?
Stop calling them indie films. That's what it is. Yeah. Because then you're kind of categorizing it, and when you categorizing it, a lot of people tend to either avoid it or they kind of want to be interested in it. But right now the category of not being interested in it is very big because of the blockbusters and all that. And I remember being like, yes, thank you. That's what I've been saying too. Cause I, we watch a lot of people on the internet, always talking about movies and TV shows. And one thing they always say is like, nowadays movies suck nowadays and blah, blah, blah. Like, why has this been happening recently? We're kind of like, I hate that so much. And then
because look, there's a kernel of truth. Some kind of movies suck.
Yeah.
The modern day generic blockbuster. And if that's all you see, I understand if you say all movies suck.
Yes.
But that's the problem.
Yes.
If that's all you see, you are the problem.
Yes, exactly. Because that is their excuse. They're going like, oh, but we're talking about, modern blockbusters, and we're talking the, what is it, big media ones, whatever. I can't remember the exact words of it. But that's what we're talking about. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can agree. Yeah, we haven't been liking some of the Marvel movies coming out. We definitely don't like the DC movies coming out and all that. We haven't liked a lot of those, and we can agree on that. But you can't just say, you can't just categorize it though. Like that's not you. If you're categorizing it, that's all you're going to talk about. That's all you want to bring up. That's all you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's that thing. The whole any press is good press or something like that. As long as you're talking about it, they don't fucking care. The studios don't fucking care. It doesn't matter what they say. Yeah, and then ultimately it's just going to be the money that that's for sure going to settle. And yeah, they're slowly losing money and all that, but they don't know that it's because it's bad. They're just thinking we're not getting their attention anymore or something like that. They're trying to get us. They're trying to get our attention again and all that, but not by making it good. The only way you can make it good is talking about the other ones, the indie movies that we're trying to get other people to watch. You talk about them, you bring them up, you hype them up. Then the studios was thinking, okay, they want to see this person, let's bring it over to this side. And that's how the Marvel movies have been good. They see one good movie from one director, they bring them on and they make something different. They make something new. It's how Thor became like a really popular character. Just basically overnight. As soon as Taika Waititi came in, everyone was just like, we want Thor. We love Thor. So yeah,
right.
Just you can't just we got to stop categorizing it, that. And I mean, like I said, we're talking about some of the blockbusters and all that. We do tend to talk about that a lot. And sometimes our main subjects.
We did.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like Ahsoka was the most we've dedicated to something that mainstream in a while. But to be fair, our own Peter Martinez, who at this point operates like a phantom, right? Because he's never here.
Yeah.
But he's always kind of hanging over the show. But a long time ago, he would literally, and again, I used to be this person too, guys. This is why I know where the delusion comes from, where you would just stick to certain kind of movies that you already like and not seek out anything else because of fear of wasting your time. Get over that. I did, and guess what? I'm better off for it. I love all kinds of movies now.
Mm-hmm.
I see every single kind of movie I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
More on that later. But what Peter was saying a long time ago when he was criticizing me and Kyle, back when in the early days of the show, that all that we would talk about would be Disney stuff. Disney, Star Wars, Marvel, blockbuster. Much. And I'm speaking about, okay, to be very specific, the first 100 episodes, of the show, which was a long time ago at this point. And to be fair, at that point, speaking for me personally, I can't say I had really any business talking about anything that was not in that domain, because that's what I knew. At that point, I had not ventured out into the works of many artists that I love now. I loved Spielberg films, but those are the blockbusters that I had seen in Lincoln, and that was it. I hadn't seen any of the other amazing Spielberg films, or Scorsese, or Hayao Miyazaki, or Guillermo del Toro, or Ridley Scott, or Denis Villeneuve, or Christopher Nolan. Like, there was a lot of works from established, amazing people, or even classics at that point I had not seen. Now I have seen a lot of those, but still to this day, we all have our blind spots. I still haven't seen, classic films, certain classic movies. I haven't even seen certain films that were in recent years. Like, I need to see The Favorite. I haven't seen The Favorite yet. I haven't seen, like I mentioned, Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah.
So we all have blind spots about like certain films that we see or don't see. That really isn't the issue here. But over the years, what we did, and in large part thanks to Peter, we opened ourselves up to different kinds of movies and different genres of films. I'm sorry to say that I don't have anything really prepared this October for anything horror Halloween themed, because Peter is just out of commission. I spoke with him this week. We had a great back and forth talking about the new Scorsese film, but he's going to be gone for a while.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to have the time to come back for at least a few more months, just the way that it is.
Yeah.
But we were going to do an Evil Dead episode, because he had me see Evil Dead 2, and Medieval Dead, or as they call Army of Darkness.
God.
I know. I saw all those movies, and they're so different, and they're so weird and cool and funny and scary also too. And I would love to sit here and talk to and have you guys listen to an episode of me talking about him about, and of course he loves horror and he loves Evil Dead. That would be great back and forth. But at the same time, I also want to talk to him about, like, for the first time I've seen all of Miyazaki's works. There's a lot I have to say. And I've also seen the rest of Scorsese's movies as well. Like, again, in the absence, and I mentioned this last week, in the absence of a really new and interesting stuff, I had to go and basically curate my own mini film festival, right? And you want to know what I've seen in these last 2 months? I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to open my letterbox, and these are different kinds of films. And I am not saying this to show off. I am just saying this here.
No, yeah.
These are movies that I like, and I want you guys to know about and hear about and see yourself.
For sure. And, lately for me, it's been a struggle to watch, these kinds of movies that are just different, not blockbusters. I'm looking at my list right now for this year, and it's all just blockbusters. Spider-Man, Dungeons and Dragons, and all that. I think the only two that's like not
Oppenheimer and Barbie.
No, that aren't like big blockbusters or anything, or just in the media a lot, is Nimona and Talk to Me. Like, those are the only two that I can think about. Nimona is so worth it, but there was a time though where I was watching a whole lot of them. A lot of them, I can't remember what it was. Was it 2019? Might have been 2019. Where I was just like talking about one movie after another. There was one episode where I talked about like 8 movies that I've seen. And so, there was a time that I can do it. It's just right now I'm literally running out of money.
Oh man.
Yeah, but
yeah. You got to see however you can, right? Not break the bank or anything. So in the past, since July, I've seen the new Indiana Jones, Asteroid City, The Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, all of the Mission Impossible films for the first time, except for Fallout, because I had seen Fallout before, and then of course the new one, Dead Reckoning Part 1. Then Oppenheimer, Barbie, Mutant Mayhem, and then again, these are going to be older films, some of them, but my first time seeing them. Princess Mononoke, Blue Beetle, Porco Rosso, The Wind Rises, Kiki's Delivery Service, My Neighbor Totoro, Ponyo, El Conde, Castle in the Sky, Past Lives, The Creator. Now there comes the Scorsese. These are the rest of the Scorsese films that I haven't seen with some a little bit more of Miyazaki. After Hours, Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind, Howl's Moving Castle, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, The Color of Money, The Age of Innocence, Kundun, The Last Waltz. And then these were some 2 other ones that were just like, fuck it. Arachnophobia, which was pretty cool and awesome and disgusting and gross, and I screamed the whole movie. I hate spiders. And there was this one image, the ick I got. There was this image of this like huge spider's nest, and they were like hatching, and these things were crawling out. I literally wanted to throw up. It was disgusting. Yeah. I also saw Edge of 17, not the 2017 version, but the 1998 version.
Oh.
Not the same story, different earlier one.
Oh.
Then Who's That Knocking at My Door? Scorsese's first movie ever from 1967. The Aviator, Cape Fear, The Last Temptation of Christ, Bringing Out the Dead. Did you know that Marty made a movie with Nicolas Cage? That was it. I had no idea it existed. I just saw it, Bringing Out the Dead. And then, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon. So those were all very different kind of movies. Like even in Scorsese's films, they can range for sure. They're not all the same. I know that he gets a bad rap of like, oh, he only makes gangster movies. Or he only makes crime movies. No.
Nah.
That's not really it. So I knew that. I mean, I was interested in Miyazaki for a long time, and I know he has a new movie coming out this year, which I can't wait. They announced the cast a few days ago. It includes Christian Bale, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista. So I'm like really so excited for that film. So I wanted to like actually see his works. I did. I love them. They're amazing. He's fucking incredible. Like seriously. And then of course Scorsese, who years ago we had done an initial like Scorsese file show of like certain number of his movies that were thematically linked together. That was in the ramp up to The Irishman. And there were other films that we hadn't seen. I hadn't seen. And so I saw them. So I'm just curious though, David, of the movies that I mentioned there, did a number of them stick out to you as some that you've seen?
Not really.
No, I mean, I know. I mean, the Miyazaki films, right? Like
for sure, the Miyazaki movies. Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to like get all the movies in DVDs, for quite a while now, and
right.
So we're trying to see as many as we can. But yeah, the Scorsese movies. I mean, I don't think I've seen a handful of them yet. Wolf of Wall Street for sure. Hugo. Irishman.
Some of them are hard to find.
Yeah.
A lot of them, as a matter of fact, are hard to find. There was one film, Kundun. You can find it on YouTube if it's still there. Not on Disney Plus. Apparently Disney owns it, but they will not release it because they themselves buried it because the Chinese government didn't like it.
Oh wow.
So they had to it was a lot of Marty's movies, unfortunately, were harmed by a lot of outside factors. Harmed in that they weren't widely seen when they released. So the more successful stuff, the more popular stuff, because the people actually saw that, was the crime gangster stuff that has carried a lot of his I guess his identity in the popular culture, if you will. But ultimately is like takes like these that I mentioned here about like, you know, you have to be boring, as that's a requirement to be considered prestige. Like, you know what? I'm not going to lie. At one point in my younger film days, maybe, yeah, I'm like, I don't get it. You know what? Sometimes you're not going to get a film, but that's okay if you don't get a movie, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I know one of my friends, Julio, he likes the idea of getting into movies, but he just has terrible luck sometimes where he just dives himself into a film. He convinces himself it's high art, and maybe it is, but that he would be open to, but he doesn't know himself nearly as well as we know him as far as like what he likes in movies. And he watched Beau is Afraid, and I'm like, everybody you know knows you wouldn't like that movie. Why would you think you would like that movie?
Yeah.
So that's all it takes for some people, and it just like it turns them off into even trying to engage with something. And look, I understand that we all find different things boring, but at the same time, Scorsese stuff is slow and methodical. Lately, with Silence, Irishman, and this new movie, it is slow and methodical, but I don't mean slow in the same way that all of you mean slow, right? Like, to me, slowly paced stuff is not inherently a bad thing if there is always something continuously happening on screen that advances the story and the characters and the relationships. And Scorsese films have always done that, especially his last three, especially this new one. This new one is 3.5 hours long. Let me tell you, I've seen it twice already. You barely feel the length. Because it's always moving. It's always going, and there's always something on screen that captivates you. You know what felt like an eternity? And it was boring as shit? Ahsoka.
Yeah. Ahsoka. I remember when me and Ale watched Peter Pan and Wendy. That one felt like forever. And I'm pretty sure it wasn't like I don't think it was 2 hours long at all. But it just felt like it going on and on. I'm kind of like, what was the point in some of these changes you were doing? Like, I don't understand it. And and I mean, and I mentioned many times, Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse. That one's I would say a slow-paced movie, and I fucking love every single second of it. You know, I wanted more of this movie.
It has a good claim to being the best movie of the year.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly. And by the way, that I think the same thing could be said of Oppenheimer. It can be said of Killers of the Flower Moon, and then also Past Lives, which I talked about a few weeks ago. I think all four of those films have a claim, and I know Poor Things does as well, but I haven't seen Poor Things. But I have seen Barbie, and I would not be opposed because I think Barbie's a great movie too, which, by the way, came out on physical media this week for those who are interested.
And then,
and Kyle purchased it, so if you want to see Barbie, it's on our Voodoo locker.
Nice.
I haven't purchased I didn't go out to get it yet. But since he already bought the digital copy, I'll just go on eBay and get like a cheaper version of it, so I can have the disc of it anyway. But go ahead.
Oppenheimer. I was mentioned Oppenheimer. That one's a very long movie, but you don't feel it at all.
You feel the length in Oppenheimer more than you do in this one, and this one's longer. This one's longer by a good half hour.
Okay. Yeah, but that one, like, you know, that one's for sure super fast paced and all that. Like, every information you get, it's important to what's going on in the moment, but also important to the story, especially at the very end, and all that. But, you know, it's just a movie or a story is as long as you need it to be. But the important part is to know what you need. Evident, you know that. So, yeah, it's just, I think the whole talk about the length of a movie, it's just kind of boring, really. Just like, it's not necessary. Okay, if it's 3.5 hours long, you know, you deal with it. You know, The Way of Water. That one's a very long movie, but again, that's one movie that I love every single second of it. Yes. I love the world. I like the characters, and then I think it's just all worth it at the end for this big, you know, action set piece at the end. You know,
the whole last hour, basically.
The whole last hour, yeah.
No, man, Way of Water's fucking incredible. It really is. So, yeah, I've never understood this whole thing of like, it's too long. Again, people think focusing on the wrong things here about films and everything. But so we can actually get to this. It was announced that Best Buy is pulling out completely of physical media, not just in stores, but also online. And it's not at all surprising, but it is surprising to a certain extent. We have been talking about it for years now, and it is shocking when you think about how much they've downsized the space that they have for physical media. You know, it used to be like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, for Black Friday, one of the things that they would promote heavily on their flyers was their discounts for physical media discs. Now they're pulling out entirely. It is the end of an era, and of course I'm saddened by it. But at the same time, you know, Best Buy is kind of like they're at a point now where, yeah, just go ahead and do it, because what good are you for anyway? when so many people, I don't know, and you may not be aware of this, but so many people end up getting their online orders of steelbooks smashed in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
So many, well, and then of course, they've also raised the prices. So like every steelbook now, they want $50 for it.
Yeah.
And I think one of them was priced at $60. The new Godzilla steelbook this week or this coming week was priced for $60 when you can get it anywhere else for half that price. Like they were just like signaling, fuck you. We don't care about you. We want you gone. We don't want you anymore. And it is such a weird time because while physical media is becoming more and more niche, and you see it when these big places like Best Buy and Target are phasing it out, the actual manufacturers and distributors, they're not pulling back on that. They're still going to keep making them. Amazon is still going to keep selling them. Walmart is still going to keep selling them. But they're not it, though. They're the people that sell them, but the ones that make these discs are continuing to do so. And it's a weird time when, we have this news, but then Disney has revitalized completely its whole priorities in actually making really good quality physical media discs again. Such a strange time, David. Your reaction when you heard the news?
No, it just kind of sucks. I love their steelbooks and all that.
Yeah.
I haven't bought a lot of physical media in a while, but that's mostly because the prices keep going higher.
Yeah, they keep going up and up.
Yeah, and I can only like purchase so much. I really have to be selective on what I purchase nowadays. So it's just kind of like it's either this or I can buy this new book that I really want to read, or I bought the new Spider-Man game you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah,
I bought that, worth it. And I mean, for one thing though, I think this is maybe the studio's chance to just kind of like do your own now, like make it your own, make it good, and don't just make one for just DVDs and everything. Sell posters or something. We love posters. Hello, look at my room right here. Right. Look at your room. Fucking.
Yep.
People love physical media, and if you can give us something that we can like, even if it's just not just DVD, but like if you can give us something that we can like just kind of show off to anyone really that hey, we really love this movie. We want to show off that we love a certain thing, movie, show, anime, comic book, even. This is kind of your chance now to just come up, and then now you can make even more money, not just through the box office, because I think this is something that we've been saying for a while. The box office isn't the only way you can make money. You can make it through physical media. So,
yeah. Again, like how I said last time, it's depressing, but I'll be cautious. I want to be cautious about how depressing it actually is, because it's more of a wait and see situation, and we'll see how this plays out for Best Buy too. Let's see if it actually is in their best interest. But yeah, I guess we're gonna leave it there and see. What did you make, by the way? Let's get back to the Marvel side of things. What did you make of all of the drama that came out of Daredevil Born Again?
All right. So, I mean, just to kind of recap it, basically, they pulled the plug. They were like, we're starting all over.
Which they've never done before.
Marvel
Studios, Kevin Feige, have never once done this. They always just reshoot, rewrite until they find a version of it that they're happy with, and they just dump it. They've never actually said, this is too bad for even us, so we got to do it all over again.
So they for sure said that it was bad, and they scrapped it.
From what I read, they had filmed a little less than half of the episodes. So if it was an 18-episode season, half would be 9. So a little less than half could be anywhere between 4 to 6, maybe even 7 episodes. They filmed those, and when they shut down, during the strike, the writers and actors strike, when they shut down, it gave Kevin Feige an opportunity to see the dailies, which is, time out right there. You weren't already doing that?
Yeah.
You mean to tell me that if it wasn't for this strike, you weren't going to sit down and watch if this show was working or not until the very end after they shot the whole damn 18-episode season?
Yeah.
And you wonder why you're failing?
That says a lot right there.
Right?
Like the fact that he literally had an opportunity now to kind of go, hey, let's see how this one's going. Oh, wait a minute. Is this how the rest of the shows have been?
That's exactly what it is, because he was like, oh, this is bad. So he saw it and it was like, but it also speaks to what he personally felt were some of the issues with. Apparently, one of the issues that was most important to him for why it wasn't good was that it took 4 episodes for the costume to be put on.
Really? Oh, wait, okay. What the fuck?
Yeah, but to me, like, there were much bigger issues than that. I understand that being something of an issue, but what was not reported in that article, but others did confirm. Because one leaker put out there, he deleted it because it was true, and others were saying that it was. The reason why Karen and Foggy were not on the show. And this was always highly suspect. We were very, very confused why they weren't involved. And it looks like, because they didn't want them to be involved. And they were like, we're going to bring back just, Charlie Cox, D'Onofrio, and Bernthal, and that's it. And those other 2 people, well, even though they kind of were very much integral to the story of the main character, and were very much integral to what made that overall ensemble very special, we're just going to kill them off. We'll just not even have them show up. We're going to start by having them shot. And that was not a decision by these writers and directors that were now fired. That was a Marvel decision, which tells you that was a Kevin Feige decision. Again, this is the person going forward you want to put your faith in? You want to put your trust in? When he was about to make, and probably still will, at the end of the day, continue on with this decision. It doesn't matter if whatever you do next is somehow a little bit better than what even you thought was too bad for you. I see it as an impossibility that there exists a scenario where this is out and it's anything good. Because you making that decision to kill off two of the main characters, shows that you fundamentally do not understand the fan base of that show. You are openly spitting in their faces by doing that. And you think that's not going to backfire on you just because you brought back the Punisher and Kingpin? And notice the theme. Oh, yeah, the comic book costume characters come back, but the real people who brought their real world experience. By the way, Daredevil was so special and so great because of how non-MCU it was. It felt like a real show with real people with real problems that we would see. And what was he removing? He removed all of that. He removed the human intrigue element, and now it's going to be a show about superheroes.
I remember we watched it. So, yeah, Kevin Feige doesn't understand this show at all. Like, to me, I really do feel if those two characters die, just Daredevil is done. Like, the character, he would not have the will will to live. Honestly, like he loves those people so much, and it would literally break him. And so there's no way that if you make the show like that, you kill them off, and he just happens to move on from it. That's just gonna be a struggle. It should. You'll need more than 18 episodes for him to get over it. Honestly. But also, yeah, you mentioned that it just makes it into a superhero show. It basically gets rid of the human element of it all. That was the most entertaining part about the Marvel Netflix shows, is that it brought you down to the regular people. That was the whole point of Luke Cage and all that. He was helping his community in Harlem, trying to protect it, but also trying to evade cops and everything. It was really entertaining. Daredevil, one of the best scenes, I remember rewatching it kind of being like, oh man, this scene's kind of badass. It was when the friend and Karen Page, I can't remember the friend's name. Foggy. Yeah. No. It's Foggy.
Which
right?
one? The reporter?
No, the
Karen and Foggy are the two main
friends.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Karen and Foggy. Those two, they were in some hospital, and then all of a sudden these like two patients who were gang rivals see each other, and they're like about to beat each other up, and they're all causing chaos. But it was Foggy, the one that's like, hey, y'all, really? Like, now you decide to do this now, of all the places, of all the times where there's just fucking chaos going on. Like, are you kidding me? And it's like, he's the one that stepped up, and you're kind of like, hell yeah, right there. That's a hero. That's not a superhero. That's just a hero standing up to stupid people. You know, like he can't. Those were the best moments in the show of all the Marvel Netflix shows.
You see, I haven't seen that show in years. I haven't seen that moment in years. But you talking about it just brought it back, which tells you how memorable it was in the first place.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's the stuff that Feige considers disposable. Again, this is why I don't care about him. This is why I don't care about his vision. I don't care about what project he has coming up. To me, he has already shown himself to be wholly uninteresting. Why would I expect anything good if that's the mentality that he has? If that's literally the ideas that come out of his mind, which happen to be the worst ones, why would I care?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is I don't, you know? And, you know, the thing is, it wasn't just that Daredevil's, you know, getting a whole different, they're going to hire new people and go at it again, but they're doing a whole new structure to how they do their TV shows, and that they're actually going to treat them like TV shows. Can you talk about that? Did you get that part of the report? Or from now on, instead of shooting the whole thing and then seeing if it's any good, they're not going to do what TV does and shoot a pilot and see if it's any good before they go and put more money into it. On top of the fact that they're gonna make shows to be more like normal shows that would return for future seasons, with these characters coming back for these future seasons instead of just long movies or miniseries. And now they're actually going to have showrunners instead of just, you
directors.
know, a situation where they had, they had the direct. It was even worse than that. We just thought that we had a head writer and a head director, and that they were working in tandem as pseudo showrunners. That was not the case. What happened was they had the head writer write all the episodes, and then the head director would come in and basically be like, you know, Kanye West and Taylor Swift in the VMAs. I'm gonna let you finish, but and then they take it over from there. The head writer and head director were not working together. One was doing one part of it, and then the other came in and took it over from there. That's not how TV works.
No. That's
not how TV works at all.
I mentioned this before. In a regular TV show, what they'll do is, you know, they'll write a couple episodes and then they'll start shooting, either if they make it past the pilot, obviously, you know, they'll start shooting more episodes. And then once the writers see how they performed it on television, rewrites, complete rewrites, basically going like, oh, that's how you're delivering this. Okay, let me fix it up. That's how you always notice.
That's how you find a show.
That's how
you
you
see
find
how
a
it's
show.
received in a way, right? And then you can adjust a little bit to it.
You can notice this in any TV show. Literally, just watch the first and last episodes, and you'll see you'll see the changes of like how they just grew into these characters. The actors, I mean, the actors grew into these characters and like found a way to just deliver them perfectly. You especially see this in comedies for sure.
Right.
You know, you can tell that they're struggling like how to deliver jokes in the first season and all that, but then by the end of it, they'll realize, oh, okay, this is how this is supposed to go. They got it, and then they're the characters now.
But this whole idea that they wouldn't even it's I'm sorry. They deserve to be humiliated and feel ashamed for how stupid they were by not already doing these practices, especially when these Disney Plus shows were announced. Guess what they had that they no longer have? At their disposal, Kevin Feige had a whole television production company that he phased out. It was called Marvel Television. You had TV executives. You had TV writers. And you just like, no. No, we'll just, the thing is, and this is like, okay, use the people that were already employed on your TV arm, okay? Use them to help with the production of the shows, because how fucking asinine do you have to be to think that you can do 4 movies a year and 4 TV shows a year? Why would you think that? Why would you think you can do that? I'm not saying give up final. I know you will never give up final say so. I'm not saying you should. Well, I would think that you would, but you never will. So I'm not going to go and belabor that point. What I mean is you should have known you couldn't do it all on your own. And you feeling, Kevin Feige, that you've been like, being pulled every direction, and that that's your own fault, man. You got yourself into this situation. You had a whole bunch of people who you could have utilized, who you could have brought in, and you still would have had final creative control.
Yeah.
There was a way to do this, and you thought that you just shouldn't. And let's be honest, though, part of it was a cost-saving measure as well. This whole thing of like when they first started their Disney Plus shows, well, why would we pay a writer or a director more, but if you call them a showrunner, you had to pay them more? Well, let's not do that. We'll just treat them like movies. We'll have one head writer and one head director. Part of the problem that we've had with all these shows, all of them, was that they felt more like long movies versus TV shows. Was that they felt like from episode to episode that could be, written by different people. That didn't see the last episode. Now we know why. I mean, we knew why, but now we have confirmation for how they were doing these things. And can I just say, and I want you to comment on this specifically, because I know I wasn't the only one that noticed this, but I thought it was funny how a whole bunch of SHIELD alumni came out and were like, ha, 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 you guys are dumb, and fuck you. Not literally, but like kind of you read between the lines in their comments. Like it was, the Zuckerman sisters, who were longtime writers on the show, Drew Greenberg, who wrote many episodes, including, now his name is not mentioned as much as Elizabeth Henstridge. And remember, Henstridge played Simmons on the show, but she also, in the only episode she directed in her debut, one of the best of the whole series, As I Have Always Been, that time loop episode in season 7, that was written by Drew Greenberg. And it was even funnier when, VFX supervisor Mark Kolpak, and then of course composer Bear McCreary, who doesn't comment on this all that often, came out and was like, It's funny how our show was considered the ugly duckling when we were like doing all of this great stuff week to week.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, and I don't know if you've been feeling this too, but there's been a turn in the atmosphere when this show is brought up. And, you know, hey, I guess maybe having horrible Marvel Studios TV shows was the price to be paid. And if there ever was such a thing as karma, I guess this would be it, right? Because of all the years that it was ignored, I was doing a couple of things, was doing a lot of things the right way, and it was doing things that were pretty basic, but you were too stupid to actually follow through on that.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone capitalize on all the wonderful storylines that were literally offered to you, but would always, you know, slap them away whenever they tried to insert themselves into your own little world. And by the way, I mean, what I thought was more interesting was the idea that it's more than just Chloe Bennett. Remember a few years ago, Chloe Bennett at a convention, she made headline news when she literally like attacked Marvel Studios when she said, Marvel doesn't care about our show. And as the years have gone by, it really is revealing how every person that worked on that show not only is very passionate about the work that they created together, but they all feel the exact same the salty way about how, you know, dismissed and belittled they were by the whole big Marvel machine. And at the same time, it goes to show you that people who are watching it now for the first time are having a different take on it. I gotta say, by no means is the first season of S.H.I.E.L.D. anything to write home about. But it is a reasonably good season of TV, of network television. And the idea that that was given such a stink initially, I think has not aged all that well, especially with what I've been seeing. So I don't know. I feel like also there was this whole thing that came out recently where some people close to Joss Whedon were told that he felt weird about the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. thing because the people at Marvel Studios didn't want him directing the first. Joss Whedon's involvement with S.H.I.E.L.D., you see his name on every episode. He was only ever involved in the first episode. He directed the pilot, and he was like, peace.
Yeah.
His brother Jed and sister-in-law Marissa Tancharoen took it over from there, and Jeffrey Bell, of course, who was one of the other producer head writers. So, yeah. Before any of that stink from Joss Whedon comes into this show, I'm going to shut that down right now. No, we're not doing that. But yeah, does this give me any hope for their shows going any further? Well, I mean, they can only improve by utilizing this particular structure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't have any faith in Kevin Feige, so I don't know what we're even doing this for. But
also,
let me ask you, David. Go ahead.
Kevin Feige only really the only reason these Marvel movies were good is because he got good writers. I remember when he got very lucky, especially with the Captain America writers. They literally just kind of maybe they just worked together well or something. But I remember when they were talking about Captain America Civil War, you know, they didn't know what to do with the third Captain America movie. They were like, we just knew we wanted MODOK as the villain. They were gonna use him, but then Kevin Feige just went in and he literally just went Civil War, and then left the room, and then the writers were like, "Oh, that's a great idea, actually," and so they got to work, they wrote it, and they said this, they literally wrote the script with adding in characters in mind. Like they knew just right away that chances are we're gonna add more characters into this, so we gotta rewrite it in a way that, you know, we can add these just in case. And sure enough, they did. First one was Black Panther. They were to write him in. Cool. They still had it in mind to add in another one. They went up to Kevin Feige again, and he was like, "Cool, add another character." And all he did was just go like this, do the Spider-Man shooting whip thing, and they were like, "That's great." And they were able to add him in. Like, they were just kind of prepared for anything, and then that's how they made a good movie. And then same goes with Infinity War. When they made that, they were kind of just, they wrote it in a way. I don't know how you can even write it in this way, but they had it in mind where like anything can happen at any point and they can make changes easily. And if, mind you, that's basically how he's still making these movies and shows, where he's just always like, let's add this, let's add this, let's add this. And the writers that he gets, I mean, I hate to say this, but like, you ain't that good. You ain't that creative, I guess. It's like, you just can't really handle what Kevin Feige is trying to give to you, or trying to like make you do. Unlike the writers from Captain America and Avengers, Infinity War, they were just somehow prepared for anything.
I think ultimately there are just some people who are maybe only good if they're paired with a really good partner. Like, to me, I think on their own, George Lucas and Dave Filoni are very not good, but together they were amazing on the Clone Wars. That was a good team
for sure.
And you know what happens when they're not together? Well, we had the prequel films, and then we had Ahsoka, and then of course the Mandoverse. That's what happened. And then I think at the same time, I feel what was a really good bond was Kevin Feige, the writers Marcus and McFeely, and directors Joe and Anthony Russo. I think when they were all together, they were firing on all cylinders, and they were all literally filling in their gaps. And it worked best when they were making this movie TV show, the Marvel Universe. But ever since they've gone their separate ways, all of their careers have no. So I just think like they should have just stayed together.
Yeah,
they should have just stayed. And let me just say also, I want to play this clip here by Vera from the Council of Geeks YouTube channel, because she had a really good video on this particular subject. And I also want about like Marvel getting really, really lucky, which is what Peter has been saying all these years. So I'm going to play it right now. I know
there's some people out there who are just going to claim it's superhero fatigue. That actually none of the MCU was ever good, and it's just everybody's realizing that. And while I don't think superhero fatigue is invalid, I don't think that's the whole story. The approach that Marvel has been using that worked for as long as it did, partly because they just got really lucky with the people that they lined up, and once Whedon left and the Russo brothers left, the thing has just been ambling along like something being headed by executives as opposed to a central creative force. And Kevin Feige is a very talented producer, and he's been juggling a lot, but he's not a creative force. I don't think he necessarily even thinks he is, but he did seem to think that he could basically sideline the creative forces, bring them in for, the script, get a decent director, but like so many parts of this has just been taken out of the hands of the creatives. And honestly, a lot of it is felt like AI. And in fact, in Secret Invasion, the opening credits literally were created by AI. And this is the kind of stuff that the strike has been all about. Both strikes, the writer strike, which at time of recording has resolved, the SAG strike, which at time of recording has not resolved yet. We'll see what happens by the time this comes out. But this mentality of, okay, we can automate a lot of this, whether or not AI has literally been used in the MCU other than those opening credits of Secret Invasion, probably not. I don't think so. But the mentality that leads executives to think AI is a good idea has been in place. The modular format. We have our second unit. They handle all the action. So when we bring in writers, they hand us a script and they go away. And they've been doing the streaming shows like that, even though normally on streaming, you get a showrunner who is also a writer who shepherds the thing all the way through, and they just haven't done it. And they bring in director. Okay, shoot the script that has been approved and the action scenes are already taken care of, go. So how much of a flair the director is going to be able to put on things is going to be limited, because they have sectioned off and made into modules all these different aspects. Pre-production is basically completely handled on its own, almost separate from the creatives, because they have whatever supposed overarching plan then they're currently working towards. I think it's Secret Wars. And as they head that way, a lot of decisions are going to be made either before a director is even brought on board, or made that in a way that the director doesn't really get to change, even if the movie they would like to make would be something else. So that mentality, which is an executive mentality, has been driving Marvel for a while, and their luck has run out. They've been making these movies, these shows, this universe unsustainably. And it lasted, I feel personally, quite strongly through Endgame. But since then, you've seen it start to veer off the rails. And I'm going to argue that it's the lack of a clear creative controlling force. That hasn't been there for the product as a whole, and that really hasn't been there for most of the individual shows that have gone out on streaming. Now, at time of talking and recording, there's no word on whether a similar overhaul of Star Wars might be in the mix. That might happen. That might not. They do have Dave Filoni, who seems to be acting as the primary creative force. So they do have one over with the Star Wars streaming stuff, but they've still been doing the whole bunch of limited series thing. There is The Mandalorian, which has gotten multiple seasons, and Andor is going to get 2, but that is effectively still a limited series because they knew coming in they were only going to do 2 seasons, and they knew the format of them. So I wouldn't be shocked if there is also some restructuring over on the Star Wars end, but it might not have to be as drastic because, again, they did have people like Dave Filoni who were only handling the streaming stuff, and the movies were being handled completely separately. So Star Wars is probably in a better position, but I wouldn't be shocked if we see a dialing back of the limited series that aren't intended to continue any further.
I'm going to stop it there because I actually, on that Star Wars note, we'll get back to the Marvel real quick, but on the Star Wars thing, there was news that came out by, I think, Samba TV. That was the source, that Ahsoka lost 40% of its audience from the premiere to the finale. 40% of its audience? Which, I mean, yeah,
I get it.
I believe it. I get it. Because, I mean, I didn't want to watch it by the end of it. By the end, I was like, kill me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's bad.
Yeah. So
I wonder if that's going to make them, like, pause on... It probably will actually make them pause if they'll do a second Ahsoka season. But I also feel like, not that Vera was... I don't think she was letting them off the hook, but I think she was also saying, like, Star Wars, I think, also is in a little bit of a... needs to be retooled situation. Not that they have the same problems that Marvel has. They have similar problems. But I think the problem with Star Wars on TV is not that they don't have a creative vision. It's that that creative vision is flawed. That creative vision is... I'll just say this. Doctor Who right now is exciting and new again. There's a breath of fresh air into the fact that once again, all the people are back involved in it, and it's just so it's creative and it's exciting. Star Wars on Disney Plus is not. And I'm just going to say this, like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have the same problems that Chris Chibnall had with Doctor Who and J.J. Abrams has with everything else. They just are people who think themselves as fundamentally being these heralds or shepherds of this, content that they have such reverence for. But when they actually get to the filming of it and we see what they make, it doesn't show.
Mm-hmm.
All that shows is an endless list of
Bland.
incompetent decisions, bland choices.
Mm-hmm.
So with Star Wars, I think there's a whole separate issue that needs to be addressed there. But with Marvel, what she was saying is basically what we've been saying: the fact that the creatives are disposable.
Mm-hmm.
They make all their projects in sections. You know, they have their action unit, then they have the writing unit, then they have the filming unit, and it's like, and then they have the pre-viz, which is all done before the director even comes in, and it's like, okay, it's like what Nia DaCosta said a few weeks ago. I don't remember what her exact words were, but she was like, yeah, that's what making a Marvel movie is. She's the director of the upcoming The Marvels, which, by the way, Marvel themselves are very, very nervous about how it's going to perform, and they should be.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I think the Marvel's trailers have been the single worst marketing campaign they've had. No one is excited about that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it opens about as big as The Flash did, which, mind you, that sounds good if you didn't realize that The Flash is one of the biggest bombs of all time. Like The Flash opened with $55 million, which is about what the Marvels might do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is bad.
Yeah, for sure.
So ultimately, your thoughts on what that clip was and everything.
No, yeah, it's basically what I was saying. Like, I mean, she said that their luck has run out, but I was just out basically saying like he's just not getting the right people. I'm sure maybe these people are good at writing a story, but they're just not good at working with the demands of what Kevin Feige is doing, which is just like add this. Actually, let's take out this part, and maybe that part is actually very important to the story that they wanted to tell. And all, but like, yeah, it just he just hasn't gotten the right people yet, or the right people who works well with him. Instead of he's just getting other people who would just do exactly what he says, instead of making their own creative choices and all that.
Yeah, man, it just goes to show you, like, I don't know what you would expect anything good.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I'm actually going to go watch the Marvels in theaters. Because or if I even care to see any of the other ones. I feel like this year has officially been the breaking point for me. I haven't been watching all the new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to watch the Marvels. I know I didn't watch Secret Invasion. And I know right now I'm not watching Loki.
Yeah.
And I hear Loki had a really good first episode. But then I also heard that it kind of went off the rails in episode 2 and 3.
Yeah. I saw the first 2 episodes. I haven't watched the third one. I kind of struggle to get to it. But also, I mean, right now, like I said, I'm playing Spider-Man, so that's more important.
So how is the show, Loki?
The first episode I thought was fine. I think I kind of like the idea of Loki being like super afraid of Kang coming. And like he's just kind of like trying to get everyone to be on the same page. Like, we need to prepare for this.
If only his girlfriends knew that. I mean, we'll see. I don't know. No, you want to say guilty or not? Like, apparently, I saw a tweet of some rumors that were saying that he actually is gonna win his trial. So we'll see what happens there. But like, everybody is waiting to see if he's gonna have a career or not, depending on how this trial goes and what those accusations were. Because it wasn't just accusations, like this is an actual trial that happened.
Yeah.
So.
And then in the second episode, I'm just like, wait, what's going on here? Where are we at in the story? Because like it really feels like there was just this jump and that we're getting into some plot. But I don't know what's going on most of it. And I really needed like some kind of recap of some of these characters. Like, wait, who are you? And then finally towards the end, I'm like, oh, that's right, you're talking about this character. I thought you were talking about someone else. And it was just so confusing. But then also, Tom Hiddleston, he's a really good actor. something about this is not working for me. Like, I don't know what it is.
He's tired.
Honestly, probably. Like,
He's just done playing this character.
maybe. I honestly think so. Like, I don't know. There was just this one moment where he had to be like super scary in front of someone, but I'm just kind of like, I feel like
Or
you
maybe,
really.
or maybe you're over the character.
I really don't know what it is. I don't think I'm over the character because I liked his funny bits. I liked his moments because he's funny in the show for sure, especially with him and Mobius and Ki Hui Kwan. When he pops up, it's actually really fun when he pops up. I don't know. He's funny, but like I don't know, just him trying to be that menacing self, like it's just not working. I don't know if that's supposed to be a character thing or what, but I feel like he might be half-assing this performance at the very least. Just something about his
very interesting, yeah. And apparently, what's more interesting than what the show is that no one's watching it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
also,
not, yeah.
Also, I really, he mentions Kang as a threat, but I just don't know how you prepare for that at all. I don't know how.
Right?
I don't
Yeah.
know. And then they're talking about like, the before in the first season, they're like, we're trying to keep this one timeline safe and all that, but now it's spread off. And I'm kind of like, how do you defend that? Like, how do you even know what your timeline is exactly and how it is? And I just don't know how this whole thing works now. Like before, it was just like, yeah, there's one timeline. They protect that. And it's like, yeah, that's perfectly fine, I guess. But now I'm just kind of like, okay, how does this whole world work now when there's a multiverse? I don't know.
Well, like I was saying, apparently the show is just not. It's not the hit that it was supposed to. That the first season was.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly surprising because, hey, this year has not been great for Marvel projects. You had Quantumania and Secret Invasion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Secret Invasion is still, like, most people didn't watch that, but those that did were like, ugh. And most people that didn't were like, they saw episode 1 and they're like, no, thank you. So I think we're at the point that if it's affecting Loki, I'm sorry, but I think the damage is done. Like, I think what's happening with Loki is, well, it's suffering for the sins of everything that came before the fact. It's like what's happened with all these new DC films in 2023 is that they're all paying for years and years of bad films that came out before them.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing both DC and Marvel. Again, Marvel is not quite there yet on the lowness of where DC is, but I mean, we're literally at a moment where now they're both kind of flailing. And DC kind of has to wait and see. They have a plan, but they have to wait for that plan to actually be actualized. They have to make a movie first and see how that's received. But then you also have to wonder if they're like not really caring and are just waiting to sell themselves to Universal, which again, I pray that somebody in the federal government is paying attention to this, because these people are openly wishing themselves to be like, WB wants to sell themselves to Universal, and then there are rumors of Apple or Disney being bought by Apple, and I'm like, where the fuck is the federal government? Like, this has to be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't allow this to happen. So there's that situation. But yeah. This bores me.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go ahead and go on to the next thing. Unless you have anything else to add.
No. Yeah.
Okay. So I saw in theaters this week Killers of the Flower Moon by Martin Scorsese. And I want to talk about this film non-spoilery because I know you're going to watch it. And of course there are big spoilers, so I'm not going to mention any of those. But you mentioned that you saw some movies of his, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you saw The Wolf of Wall Street, which was I think The Wolf of Wall Street was my first Scorsese film. I didn't see it in theaters, but it was at the time that I was watching films, and I think it was like 2013. It's the 10th anniversary this year. Wolf of Wall Street, and a lot of people love that film. But again, speaking about how people misunderstand things, apparently people miss that point completely. The thing is, one theme I'm going to mention in this whole review is that Martin Scorsese, I think, has realized and feels kind of responsible for how a lot of people have misinterpreted the point of his movies. Like a lot of people view his films like Goodfellas, Gangs of New York, Wolf of Wall Street, Casino, as if he is, glamorizing their lifestyle. And to an extent, he did, but not really. If you watch the films in context and what happened to all those people and what it had to say about people who live their lives like that. But again, people are so intellectually uncurious. They're so dense. There are a lot of people today that think that Wolf of Wall Street was celebrating Jordan Belfort and all of what he did in that movie. And they just missed the point completely. And I think Scorsese feels kind of responsible for being subtle to the point of that happening. And I think he's kind of corrected to that in these last few films, which I'll get into in a bit in this new movie. But you saw Hugo, you saw The Irishman, and you saw Wolf of Wall Street. Were there any others that you can recall, like The Departed or Casino or Goodfellas?
The Departed, yes.
The Departed, yes. A lot of people love that movie. I love that.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casino, no. Yeah, it's probably just those four. I don't know. I gotta look up.
The one that everybody loves is Goodfellas, and I love Goodfellas too, but it's not my favorite movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
And there are many others like Raging Bull, Taxi Driver. So cannot recommend those movies enough to you, David. So if you get a chance, watch them because they're amazing cinema, of course. So this new movie, again, 3.5 hours long. Get over it, people. Even though today it was hilarious. So in my second viewing, I watched this with an all boomer crowd 3 times in the duration. Cell phones went off with, of course, obnoxiously loud ringtones, one of which played, their ringtone was the Michael Myers theme from Halloween. So it's just weird having that music play in the middle of the movie. And of course, they were all women because they were all digging through their purses trying to find the phone to turn it off. And then toward the last 10 minutes of the film, again, these are all older people. One of the guys blows up at his wife or girlfriend or partner, and come on, how long is this movie? 2 hours, 3 hours, and then just gets up and leaves, but doesn't leave because everybody sees him standing in the hallway with his head still there, just still watching the movie.
Just sit down.
So he did all that for nothing, and there was 10 minutes left, and he didn't know. But at that point, there were 2, and to be fair, at that point, it had been 3 hours, over 3 hours long. But still, it's if you're still interested, why are you making that big fuss about it? It was just so weird seeing that happen. But everybody else is having a good time, so I'm gonna say about that. So this movie was reworked because Scorsese realized that he thought that he wasn't being sensitive enough to the Osage people, which are the tribe of Native American that's heavily in this story. And I'll get to what that story is in a minute. But it was reworked because it wasn't, I guess, sensitive enough to them, or really had enough of their perspective involved in it. And I think when you see the movie, the last hour to hour and a half is basically the film he was going to make. And then the whole thing that we see now is a kind of a different animal in that it's from a very different perspective than it would have been. It involves more of the people who had this tragedy befall on them. And again, your mileage will, may vary. There have been controversial takes on how good or not of a representation this is for the Osage people. But I feel like one of the best takes on how good or not it could have been came from a member of the Osage who was the consultant for this movie. And again, he wasn't attacking the movie at all. some people were writing his comments and taking it out of context. And my only issue with his comments were that he wishes that it had been solely from Molly's perspective, the main female character here, played by Lily Gladstone. And I am sympathetic toward that.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a reasonable take to have, for sure. Although personally, having seen the film twice now, I think what we ended up getting was operating on a much larger scale. Like, to me, what is this movie actually about? Without getting into the actual plot details, and I will get to that in a minute, but it's about evil. It is one of the most comprehensive studies of evil I have ever seen. Now, all those films I mentioned before the fact, Casino, Goodfellas, Wolf of Wall Street, all those films apply to that as well. But this is different stylistically and aesthetically, is that it's not really celebrating, and it's not, delving into the lavish lifestyles that these criminals have. That's stripped away in this film deliberately, because I think Scorsese has grown tired of his films being taken out of context and missing the point. And so a lot of those subtleties are not there, especially with that ending, which is one of the best endings I've ever seen. I loved that ending so much. I wish I could say more about it, but I don't want to ruin it, though, because it comes out of nowhere in a way. Well, it doesn't. You don't expect it when it happens, at least what's happening. And I personally didn't grasp the full weight of what that ending was supposed to actually mean until after the fact and thinking more about it. Which, again, the best films make you feel that way. But let me get to his comments here, because I think they're especially powerful and important, because, of course, the Osage have the most right to say about a film that depicts their people, right? Whatever they say is the most valid. But I think he was being very fair to Scorsese's limitations. And I think Scorsese himself was being very fair with how limited he, as a white man, could be in regards to telling the story about the tragedy that befell these people. Let me play these comments.
I was nervous about the release of the film. Now that I've seen it, I have some strong opinions. As an Osage, I really wanted this to be from the perspective of Molly and what her family experienced. But I think it would take an Osage to do that. Martin Scorsese, not being Osage, I think he did a great job representing our people. But this story is being told, this history is being told almost from the perspective of Ernest Burkhart. And they kind of give him this conscience, and they kind of depict that there's love. But when somebody conspires to murder your entire family, that's not love. That's not love. That's just beyond abuse. And I think in the end, the question that you can be left with is, how long will you be complacent with racism? How long will you go along with something and not say something, not speak up? How long will you be complacent? And I think that's because this film was not made for an Osage audience. It was made for everybody not Osage. For those that have been disenfranchised, they can relate. But for other countries, that have their acts and their histories of oppression, this is an opportunity for them to ask themselves this question of morality. And so that's how I feel. That's how I feel about this film.
Yeah, so it's a mixed range of emotions, for sure. He's still supportive of the film.
Yeah.
He said himself, I think Scorsese did the best job he could have. And of course, saying that the best way for this culture, these people to be depicted, is for an Osage to do it themselves. All of those things are true. But I feel like the one thing that I would say is, when he was talking, the main relationship in this movie between Leo DiCaprio's character and Lily Gladstone's character, there's a love story in there. It is and it isn't. And you know it when you see the movie. And it's, of course, this is a real story that happened, in case that wasn't already made clear. But, and these people existed. And there's this claim there that, that what was between them wasn't what the rest of us would consider love, because of these atrocities that was committed by one of the people in the relationship. And that's fair. But at the same time, I think Scorsese comes from that perspective as well. I think a lot of the themes in one of the reoccurring themes in all of his films are these deeply tiny, complicated, small men that are trying violently to love something, to love themselves, to love others, but struggle to overcome or don't know how to do any of that. They don't know how to love. They don't know how to show that. And the only way it shows is them in violent outbursts or committing atrocities. And the folly and the hypocrisy that they claim to do all of these things in the name of love and protection. You see it in Goodfellas. You see it in The Irishman. You see it in Casino. You see it in here, Flower Moon. This film, I understand, is the culmination of the many themes that he's been talking about for the entirety of his career. And I would just say that Scorsese is on the same side as what he just said, is that, yeah, it's not really what I consider love, but these people in that moment in time, what they thought that they had was love. And that's what I'm depicting. Whether or not I think that's what love is not the issue at all. But I understand, of course, if you're the Osage and you watch this movie and it's like, well, Marty Scorsese, you say that you reworked this whole movie to make it from our perspective, but it is and it isn't. And I'll say this. The original film he was going to make basically didn't have them involved at all. Like, I feel like, okay, so this film is about these murders that happen. These murders of the Osage people. And having watched the film, it seems likeliest that the point that this was going to start originally was when the Jesse Plemons character comes in. He's the FBI agent, knocks on the door, and then that's where we start. That moment doesn't happen in this movie until hour 3, I think. So there's a whole backstory that's now in this movie that was not there at all. Wasn't going to be there. And I think personally, this story and how Scorsese has told it is benefited greatly by adding in that backstory. I feel it makes for a far more interesting movie and a far better film, having that time with these characters before the fact and seeing the premeditated evilness that was lurking in there the entire time, before we even get to the FBI getting involved to investigate all these murders that happened. So I think it's one of these situations where no one's wrong and no one's wholly right. Like, it's just, but I think that Scorsese was doing his best to include the Osage as much as possible. But I also feel like there are some takes out there that I don't agree with at all that say that the Osage people particularly came off as naive or incompetent in the film. And I'm like, well, we're living in 2023 and we see the face of evil every day. And there are all kinds of people who are tricked and fooled by all sorts of con men. And it's not just the Osage. And I don't think you're giving enough credit to the ignorance and stupidity of the American people. And I mean this wholeheartedly by saying that, oh, only the Osage could have been this naive to be tricked by, slimy white people trying to come in and take their money. It's happened to all kinds of people. And it's just depicting a reality here. It's not trying to make them or seem stupid. It was that these people came into money. And when you come into money, when you're not from money, you get taken advantage of. That's kind of what happens. Let me get into the synopsis here from Letterboxd. This is a story that happened 100 years ago. When oil is discovered in the 1920s, Oklahoma, under Osage Nation land, the Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery. So yes, the Osage people came in. Well, not they came into this power and money because oil just happened to be in their land. This was happening at the exact same time as Tulsa. So just having that historical context, yes. And I think you see it in the trailer. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, David, of this movie, but De Niro and DiCaprio's characters ain't exactly angels here. And you see it telegraphed in that trailer that in part, and again, I don't want to ruin it, but part of this is a true story that there's a premeditated plan here to infiltrate these people to exploit them. And of course, reap the benefits out of this. So having said all that, before I get into my thoughts, do you have anything to add or say? Or questions?
Not really. I mean, I was always interested in watching this movie. I really liked that one guy's comments, the video that you showed and all that. I mean, that's the fun part about any kind of movie, just getting different people's takes on it. But I mean, there's not really much for me to say since I haven't seen it. So
right. Well, I just want to give you that moment in case you had anything to add. So I will say this. Watching this movie and watching all of his movies these last few weeks and months, and also watching his interviews, I love movies. I love cinema. I love this man. And it's made me really sad because in this way, it's made me hopeful and it's made me sad. One of my greatest fears is death. I don't ever want to think of a time that I won't be alive, but it'll happen one day. And I've always hoped that by the time I get there, I would have made peace with it. And so many old people can't wait to die. They just like, I'm done with this. And then it happens. And I don't know if Scorsese is there yet, but he certainly has accepted that it's going to happen pretty soon. Because so many of the interviews he's given has been talking about how he's 80 years old. He's sad that he only thinks that just now he's really cracked the code about what cinema is all about, but he's 80. And he knows that there's not much time left for him to do much more. At the same time, he knows all his friends are gone. Robbie Robertson, who, of course, is known mostly for the band, 60s, 70s rock group that Scorsese did a documentary movie on called The Last Waltz, who also, by the way, Robertson has done several of the musical compositions for his films, like The Irishman. And as it turns out, this movie here, there is a really haunting and memorable background score in this film that Robertson wrote, and it's his last before he passed away. He passed away a few weeks ago. At 80 years old too. So I don't want to lose this guy because I think every time he makes a movie, he has something so deeply profound to say. It's like what Del Toro tweeted about a year ago, that if God had made a deal with him to shorten his life, to give Marty Scorsese more years, that he would do it. Which only shows you how much love there is for this guy in this industry. And watching the ending of this movie was so powerful for me both times. That gave me chills, down my back, thinking, is this the last time? I hope it's not the last time, because this man has too much left to say. He has too much, and that's part of the tragedy in and of itself that he has been talking about in this press tour. And this movie, of course, made me love him so much more, made me love his work so much more. I hope that, and by the way, my heart has really been warmed by a lot of the positive reception that I've seen from so many people on film Twitter in response to the film. And I'm happy that I'm not alone in wishing that some other people out there in these groups, whether it be the Globes, the critics, the Screen Actors Guild, or the Oscars, give Marty Scorsese something. Like, I would totally be down with the idea of him winning Best Director, even though I still think that the best achievement in filmmaking this year is Oppenheimer, and I think Nolan does deserve Best Director. But Scorsese is a different animal unto himself. He's a living legend who just made a masterpiece, personally speaking. And this would be, he's only ever won one Oscar. He's only ever won one Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
Roger Ebert, the most influential film critic to have ever lived, said that this man made the best movie of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, with Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, and Raging Bull. And I would say, and I'm no Roger Ebert, no one is, least of all me. But I've been saying, and so has Peter, that Scorsese has had like the best late stage act anyone has ever had, and one of the best track records, especially in this last decade. So I would hope that it's not outside the realm of possibility that there are people out there that would want to award him. And what I also am saddened by in this movie is I share his disappointment in humanity. There is a sense in this movie that the guy has realized that so much of the, I guess you could say warnings, but so much of the flawed in humanity that he depicted in his earlier works have not really made a dent in where society and humanity is today. And I think it really does get to him how depraved we've become, how far we've fallen, that we're living in a day of casual, everyday tragedies that no one will remember and that we don't care about. And this whole story is that what became basically as a common everyday tragedy. This happened 100 years ago, but of course, was this story told to us in the history books? No, it wasn't. I'll say that at times this film is hilarious and just a joy to watch for all sorts of reasons. For the costumes, the cinematography, the score, the direction, the editing, the acting, the writing. It is a film that is top-notch and firing on all cylinders. And I even will say that the pacing did surprise me. It keeps you invested throughout the whole of its runtime. And there aren't very many moments at all where it dips, where it makes you lose interest. But I would also say that it is a hard film to watch too, because of the tragedy that happens. You know, a family or people here being, you know, torn apart, basically. This is, you know, a movie about a number of many murders, so you do see a lot of murder happening, and it takes a toll on you, as it takes a toll on the characters in the film. So yeah, it's a lot, but I would say that the film ultimately for me was powerful and has left an impact. I don't know yet because it's still so new in my mind. I'm only seeing it the two times, which is not easy, by the way. It's a long commitment. It's a long movie and it's a long commitment. I just want to go ahead and read some other reactions here. They're not too long, from a different variety of people. This comes from Thomas Flight. How the man is still this on top of his game is beyond me. It's a lyrical, slow motion, contemplative journey into the heart of evil. Lily Gladstone is wow, incredible as Molly. Leo brings a depth and nuance I'm not sure I've ever seen from him. De Niro is making my skin crawl. There are a couple of sequences in here that are some of those kinds of haunting images that I know will be hard to shake. Yeah, it's long, but I only really felt the running time physically. It's gripping and expertly paced. Nobody is doing fourth acts like late Scorsese. Matt Neglia. It's an epic crime western that in the old days would have been a radio show, but today we typically see as a podcast or television miniseries, but not when you give Martin Scorsese over $200 million and full creative freedom. The result is some of Scorsese's darkest thematic content to date. DiCaprio, De Niro, Gladstone are all phenomenal, delivering performances worthy of awards recognition. The powerful ending, which will be widely discussed, took this from being great to another masterpiece from the world's greatest living director. A tragic rumination of greed and power. Kevin L. I don't know if I mentioned, Kevin L. Lee. It's tremendous. A 3.5 hour long portrait of not only American greed, but evil and complicity. And I felt every ounce of weight. Martin Scorsese directs this in such an unflinching, naked way that the tragedy seeps through in every scene. De Niro blends that gentlemanly charm with evil so brilliantly. And he doesn't even need an Oscar moment to do it. I've never seen DiCaprio this pathetic and deplorable before. The heart and soul of the film is really from Gladstone, on and off the screen. The other takeaway I got was just a wave of sadness for Scorsese. His recent work has tapped into this sort of self-reflection and reckoning, and it's been handling it with such grace and humility. It's like a new chapter for him, but he's 80. Zoe Bryant. On a rewatch, there's not a single thing about this that isn't flawless. Frankly, urgent, unforgettable, filmmaking from the first frame to the last. The scene DiCaprio and Gladstone share at the very end of the film is simply some of the best acting I've ever seen in my entire life. In fact, it goes beyond acting. There are no actors in sight, actually. In their final moments, Leo and Lily disappear completely, and all that's left is Ernest and Molly, or rather, faint glimmers of their former selves. Glimmers that are all either has left. And then Bailey Parkinson. A staggering, aching, and thunderously pensive film that ruminates on the two kinds of silence that build America. The silence enforced through the active erasure of a people and their culture, and the silence taken in the complicity to that action, as well as a third silence beyond all that. The silence any storyteller must ask themselves whether they have the understanding and the right to speak with their own voice. It's not without irony that I have so much to say about Flower Moon, so much to laud and explore and explain, with so much excitement for its piece of painfully evocative and clearly metatextual storytelling. But saying much of anything about it is not something I feel at ease with doing right now. I might not ever, because Scorsese has crafted a work in which the words of the white man mean nothing placed against their actions, a concept with which he reckons immediately and presently across its 3.5 hour runtime. It's a film that tells us this right from the very start. In the very first dialogue sequence, William Hale warns Ernest to be wary of his desire to run his mouth around the Osage people, not to avoid causing offense, but because his words will mean little in their presence. As Hale describes it, the Osage just know. That very moment paired with an opening scene in which the Osage people literally and metaphorically bury their culture to make way for the new American world, loads all that follows with an inescapable contrast between what we hear from the mouths of our white characters and what we see in their physical actions. Words become meaningless, lies or otherwise, and actions become truth, a truth we are born and witness to, and we begin to know. Between all the plans and schemes and cover-ups and talk of money in the abstract that makes no real sense, scaled against the apathy that allows it to change hands, we know. Marty holds that great white American greed in all its spiritually vacant horror against the fading ways of the Osage Nation. In a new world built on lies and empty promises, we find truth through the eyes of the Osage and their connection to the land and sky of all things that live. The only images that feel entirely honest or the story unravels are those of prayers in the morning light, of omens. Within these images, I feel a truth, the world absent from utter nonsense of our white protagonists, capitalist pursuits, and I feel called to that truth. But cinema is not truth. It's construction, one that cannot ever escape being sensationalized by nature. And no matter the good intentions of the filmmaker, it can only serve to merely represent truth from a locked-in perspective, the director's perspective. Marty knows this, and perhaps what makes Flower Moon so astounding to me, so monumental, is how it works as both a glorious, horrifying construction and a real-time reckoning of one of America's greatest architects, with why he's chosen to or been allowed to build anything at all. So clearly, people have been having some pretty deep, profound thoughts in regards to the movie. Gladstone is terrific, and so are DiCaprio and De Niro. I would say that De Niro especially, and this is saying something, while not outwardly appearing to do so, might be playing his most evil character ever, which is saying something. There's so much more I could say, but I won't because that would involve details, of course, in the story. But I just think it's a really, really great piece of cinema. And it's going to be a film that I'm going to be thinking about and engaging with for quite some time. And I would encourage you all to go see it. And understanding, of course, that this is a story that is quiet, it is intimate, it is methodical, it is purposeful, but it demands your attention. So go in with having that in mind, because it's a very different kind of movie than I think most people would be used to. But what's amazing about it is it's made by an 80-year-old who is literally operating at the height of his powers. The direction here is impeccable. And some bold choices for sure made all around. So that's my take on Killers of the Flower Moon. Before we go today, David, I don't know if you had any comments, any kind of reaction to what I said.
No, I mean, like I said, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I mean, it's kind of, I think this might be like the biggest takes I've seen from any movie in a while. Like, I mean, like, seems like people really are thinking a lot about this movie. Because I remember when Oppenheimer came out, and it was just, people were just kind of like, this is an impressive piece of cinema. And that's about it. This one, though, people were kind of like, damn, this story is kind of like tearing me apart here or something, you know? Like, they're really kind of taking it to heart what this movie was trying to say. So that's really interesting.
Right. It's always great when we get movies like those, right? Because it's challenging us. It's challenging us. It's demanding us to engage with it, which is what that's ultimately what Scorsese feels cinema is. What I agree with him. It's the best part about it. But before we go, do you want to tell us how Spider-Man is?
Oh, it's so much fun. I absolutely love the first two Spider-Man games. in the first one, Peter Parker, he's been doing this for like 8 years or something now. He's really like, he's got it down of like what kind of hero he wants to be, how he wants to like treat others and all that, blah, blah, blah. And, the first game, it really gives you that feeling of being a superhero in New York. He does have a love for it and everything. And at some point in the game, it kind of goes to shit. Bad guys take over New York, and you get that feeling of like, how fucking dare you? My city, bitch. Like, you get that. And Peter's relationships with Aunt May, MJ, and all that, like, they really all come together at the very end. There's something that happens at the end with one of those characters that just it's a fucking gut punch. It's one of the first times in the video game that made me cry.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so great. I wish I would have like played it, but or at least like recorded myself playing it. But I did with Miles Morales, and that one I love even more. The story isn't as impactful as Spider-Man, but that one though, what that game did though is that it gave you the feeling of being a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. With Peter's story, you just felt like a superhero, which is great and all, but Miles, though, you were the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Your side missions, you're taking care of other people's situations. Some store gets robbed, he gets it back. Someone just kind of it just got someone wanted a selfie with him, and you get that. And some others just kind of just got this bad situation going on, and he helps them out. And at the very end, when the bad guys, they start another basically like a war in where he lives. I think, I think he lives in Harlem. When they start causing a war in there, you're fighting all the bad guys, but you're also calling everyone that you've helped out in the entire game. You're like, "Are you safe? Are you safe? Where are you at?" Blah blah blah. Like, you're just going back and forth, and it just like that pumped me up, going like, I want to protect my neighborhood. Again, it's a fantastic game. If you love Spider-Man, you feel like Spider-Man playing in this game and all that. And this one, I haven't played much of it. I think maybe like 5 hours. And so far, what I'm liking about Peter's character is that they're finally getting into this idea of like, he really needs to balance out the superhero and normal life. They did that in Spider-Man 2 with Toby's character, where he did have to be like, you kind of have to like pick and choose your battles, your guy. But this one though, they're really trying to tell him like, you can't save everyone. You're gonna have to, step aside every once in a while, my guy. At least that's what I think it's leading into. And then with Miles' situation, him is just normal people problems. He's obviously gonna have those struggles, and especially because he's just started of like balancing out superhero and normal life stuff. But right now he doesn't really know what to do with his normal life. And so that's kind of interesting that his problems is just normal people problems. But Peter's problem is the superhero stuff, where he finally has to ask himself like, can I keep letting my superhero life really destroy my normal life? Especially because, I'll say this in the beginning, he has a teaching job. He's a teacher. And I was like, that's a great idea. I love that. We never gotten to that far into his life in any of the adaptations. He's just in college in all the other adaptations. This one, though, he needs to have a life. And he loses that immediately because of the superhero stuff. And so, again, he has to ask himself, like, what's going to take priority now? So I'm very curious what the story is going to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy you're enjoying that, and I'm happy the other people are enjoying it too. But it made me think though, while you were talking about that, about another injustice that was going on here. And actually, earlier in the week, I ran across a tweet by Matt Neglia of the Next Best Picture podcast, talking about where we are in the season in regards to one particular film that had already been in a way gone by the wayside. And this is what he said: rewatched Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse last night, and if there was ever a case to be made for an animated film receiving an Oscar nomination for Best Film Editing, this is it. One of the best films of 2023, deserving of more nominations than just Best Animated Feature Film. And I'll just say this. I'll go a few steps further in saying it is, to me, more than any other, case where there could have been a nominated animated movie. This one I think is going to be the most awkward in that I think there is a strong case to be made that Across the Spider-Verse is the best movie of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the best achievement in filmmaking. But because of its medium, which is animation, and because so many in the industry and in the Academy don't take it seriously, it's dead on arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because, there've only ever been 3 animated films included for Best Picture: Beauty and the Beast, Up, and Toy Story 3. Now, the idea when they expanded the nominees from 5 to 10 was to include as many different kinds of movies as possible. Of course, horror was probably never going to be in that group. But I'm sorry, but animation doesn't seem to have been included either, because I would make a strong case that the first film should have gotten the Best Picture nomination
for sure,
Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
And this one should also, if not even more so, win this one. And it is a little bit awkward because, well, yeah, I still think it. Well, I haven't seen The Boy and the Heron, but there's going to be a real race now between that movie and the Spider-Verse movie for animated feature. But I would also say that looking at the terrain of the movies that are out there right now, I always make a list on Letterboxd of films that I would like to see be nominated for Best Picture. Just because, and what did I put? Oh yeah. I think to me what would make an awesome 10 Best Picture group would be Oppenheimer, Poor Things, Flower Moon, Barbie, Maestro, The Holdovers, Past Lives, Color Purple, and The Boy and the Heron and Across the Spider-Verse. Like for me, again, I'd go a step further and include 2 animated films. I think I was the only one to have 2 animated films in my top 10 list last year. I had Turning Red and Pinocchio on there. You can accuse me of gloating. I don't know. I like animated movies, and I think they're so disrespected.
No, yeah.
And like Del Toro, I'm sorry, and I know you personally didn't love his Pinocchio movie, but a lot of people did, and I think I don't know, it should have been considered, but because it was animation, it was like, well, bye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, but part of the reason why I think Into the Spider-Verse should have won Best Picture, or at least get a nomination, it's because it pushed animation into something different. For the longest time, we just kind of wanted realistic features into animation, whether it's within the characters' movements in the background or anything. I mean, Encanto, I love it for its visuals. There is a beautiful setting in it, and when that moment in Dos Orgullitas.
Yes, you got there.
Yeah, I got that. That moment, towards the end of the song, the kind of like mountains depart or something. I can't remember what happened, but the sun is shining on them, the beautiful lake that they're on, just everything about it was amazing. But Into the Spider-Verse, like I said, it pushes animation to like different things. We had a mix of 3D and 2D animation and different genres of animation too, with just cartoons with Spider-Pig, but also anime with what was it, Penny Parker? I think that was her name. And it just utilized what they had into creating something new and something special within its story too, and one that you really wouldn't have gotten in live action at all. I mean, that scene at the end when they're all fighting, the colliders colliding, and all those visuals of the cities like coming in, like coming out of the collider and everything, the colors popping out everywhere. And then you mentioned this too, like, there's dots like everywhere as the collider is going on, and that was like a reference to or comic style. That whenever it shows some kind of cosmic energy going on, that's what they would do, just kind of put dots around it. That's how they show cosmic energy. Like it utilized a whole bunch of artistic styles in a great way. And it deserved Best Picture just for that, for pushing something that we thought we kind of like got it down. But no, it tried something new, and now we're getting something great in animation because of it. I mean, fucking Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, was absolutely incredible, and a lot of it because of its action, how they utilized that style of animation into their movie, and I hope to see more of that. And then this one, they got what they knew what they had, they got it, but now they used more of a realistic setting into their world, but that one but they used it just to kind of calm down the scene, kind of let you stay in it for a minute before you move on. And
I'm just gonna warn the audience right now, we're gonna be bitching about this all for the rest of time. But certainly for the remainder of the year, when we're talking about what are the best movies of the year and when we're covering the award season, this film absolutely deserves to be mentioned and in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just does. And also, I want to wrap around also by saying that, not that these films, like, originally how I was saying that, well, yeah, I am sympathetic of like blockbusters not having their time to shine. I can think of a number of blockbusters that were absolutely like prestige in their own right and were, should have been given some kind of recognition. Now, I don't want to pit them against the actual movies that were nominated, but I know particularly 2017 stands out as a year of remarkable blockbuster films. That was the year of Logan. That was the year of Blade Runner 2049. That was the year of War for the Planet of the Apes. That was the year of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. That was the year of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Those are 5. To me, those are 5 of the best blockbusters ever made.
Mm-hmm.
If there was ever a year where great blockbuster filmmaking of any kind should have been recognized, those 5 movies have plenty of things to pick from there. Not the least of which, performances. I think of Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman, in Logan. I think of, certainly Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, maybe their best work ever in The Last Jedi. Karen Gillan is remarkable in Guardians on all the movies, but of course she was great in Volume 2. Andy Serkis, yes, even if he was wearing motion capture equipment, at the very least, it could have given it a visual effects win, but you couldn't even do that. But I would certainly argue he was worthy of a nomination for Best Actor, because fuck, was he amazing as Caesar. Ana de Armas, I think maybe is still her best role ever in Blade Runner 2049. Did you ever watch that movie, by the way?
2049. Yeah, I saw it. I saw that in theaters, and I regret it so much. In the movie, I really had to pee, but like the whole time I was like, I can't leave. This is like everything here going on is so fucking great, but I couldn't hold it anymore, and I left. And then as soon as I came back, it was the moment where Ryan Gosling's character was looking at the giant hologram of Ana de Armas, and I immediately went, I know exactly what happened in that moment, and what the fuck, I missed it.
You missed?
Yeah, it was like it was at the very end of him looking at the hologram, and I was like, he just realized that her feelings towards him were fake. We're just not real. And I couldn't believe I missed that moment. I was like, God damn it. And I love that movie.
Wow. Wow, man. I'm sorry that you missed that. That must have been so infuriating. Oh, man. But it still couldn't have been as bad as the time that I ruined Knives Out for you.
That was funny.
I was like, damn it. I don't know what I was thinking putting that out there.
Mm.
But I mean, it's in the name, ransom.
Yeah. That's why
I mean,
you literally wrote that too. It's just like its name was Ransom, and I'm like, oh, that's his character, isn't it?
yeah. So yeah, my point was there are plenty of blockbuster films that we could talk about, but rarely are they the ones that end up getting some sort. I mean, I didn't mention Maverick and Avatar because they did get nominated, so there's that. But there are a number. I mean, but yeah, they got nominated. But you know what? I'm sorry, Elvis. I'm sorry, Triangle of Sadness, and I am sorry, All Quiet on the Western Front. But speaking of blockbusters that should have gotten in, the Batman. Anybody? The Batman,
For sure.
which I'm sorry, I know some people don't quite gel with it, and I'm sorry for you, but I genuinely think it's the best Batman movie.
Mm.
So yeah, and yet all those films didn't get much of anything. But you know what did? Black Panther. And even its sequel, Wakanda Forever, was able to win an Oscar too. I think it won for Ruth Carter in costumes, I want to say. Which I'm not saying was not deserved, but it's just like, well, interesting. Very, very interesting. And I would say that for however maligned the Marvel machine has become, and rightfully, deservedly so, I still say I was very wowed with the visual effects of Infinity War and Endgame. And I think wins for those films were definitely deserved. And I'm surprised that they weren't. I don't know. They did. I know for a fact they didn't win. I don't know what else did win, but I'm like, I don't know. Because you know what? We give a lot of crap to Marvel these days for their VFX. And again, deservedly so.
Yeah.
But, you know, at one point they did deliver some amazingly looking movies. And those were instances of amazing looking films that were deserving of wins. So it's not that these films are not deserving. In some instances they are. And yes, there is a bit of an inherent bias against those films, by and large. But that doesn't mean that most of the movies that are nominated, with the exception of 2018, because that was a shit show of a year, where most of the stuff that was nominated and won was like, kill me. Like one person said it in a recent podcast I listened to in a retrospective of that year. It wasn't just one, but two villains won that night. I mean, like award season villains. You know how in the online sphere we treat it like a reality show, right? That's how it is for us. And so every year there is a hero and a villain. And that year there were two villains, Green Book and Bohemian Rhapsody, which ended up being the biggest winners of that night. And you could have gone so many ways. You had Roma, you had A Star Is Born, you had Black Klansman, you had The Favorite. They were all there. But the biggest winners were Bohemian Rhapsody and Green Book. So it's like, hey, it's not like shit doesn't win sometimes. It does from time to time, and we shouldn't forget that. But the overall point is just watch more movies, people, please. Just open yourselves up to different kinds of movies. Like documentaries, too. I think in 2018, Won't You Be My Neighbor should have gotten the Best Picture nomination. Because that was an amazing documentary film. And by the way, I think to date, the single most successful documentary film to have ever been released in theaters. But was it nominated for Best Documentary Feature? It was not, because it was a front runner. And it was too successful. Again, we go over all these things on the past shows. So yeah, that's generally where we come from, and what we hope to inspire on the show is to just, you know, get people to try different things and to absorb different perspectives. I think that we've become so closed off and so entrenched in our preconceived notions that we've just become unwilling to listen to other people's perspectives and point of views. And I do not mean to consider the perspectives and point of views of people who act in bad faith, like the people who scream and shout at you of go woke, go broke, all those alt-right, extreme YouTube channels that are going into this space to tear down big Hollywood films that are really just trying to represent as many cultures and ethnicities and identities as possible. The people who are, saying that bringing more exposure and awareness to the existence of different kinds of people is wrong. They're acting in bad faith. They have an agenda. They shouldn't be considered or listened to.
And mind you, we've been talking shit about big studios. You and I, we literally don't mind you wanting to tear them apart, but we literally don't understand why you gotta bring the, go woke stuff into your reviews and all. Like, we don't see it. We don't know how you able to see this movie. Like, especially with Barbie movies, that really like showed off your fucking colors right there. We had fun with this movie. We kind of went, and I noticed the speech the America Ferrera was making, like I saw that and I went like, okay, they're gonna bitch about this part, but I was just finding like, yeah, just someone venting. I don't know, because they probably did deal with this. Like that's all I see. It's just like someone deal with this. I wasn't like moved by the speech or anything like that. It just kind of went, there's someone's venting.
Also, it wasn't for you though. That moment wasn't for you. It was for women.
Yeah.
Who and we as men don't know that experience. So it's kind of impossible for us to react or respond to that moment. Not that we can't have any kind of emotional moment, but it's impossible for us to feel it the way that women would feel it, because they live that and they know it.
Yeah.
And I know that in my screening, the first time I saw it, there were applause from particularly women in the crowd who were watching that film. Which that is a far more real perspective than those who we were just, ostracizing because all they care about is their conservative viewpoint, which again, I understand and recognize that there are many beautiful, well-intentioned people out there who like to think of their conservative viewpoint as coming from a place of decency and honesty and godliness. I understand, I appreciate that, but at the same time, most people in this particular space do not act like that at all. And their brand of conservatism is operating at one from exclusion. They are repeatedly mad at various different types of people being represented or existing at all in these movies. Their agenda, without telling you, is they don't want you to know that these people out there exist. Like right now, that go woke, go broke crowd, guess who they're giving a negative review to? The Scorsese movie. Because why? Oh, because it's making America look bad. They did it themselves.
Yeah.
These people did it themselves. And what do you mean it's making America look bad? What did that? The erasure of Native American people? Like, come on, who are you winning over with that argument? The American people committed genocide against Native Americans. All kinds, not just the Osage. And even then, and it's like, Jesus Christ, how many times do we have to go over this? It's like, throughout the many years of America, white people in power have infiltrated communities of color and eviscerated them because they threatened their wealth. They threatened their power. That is the story of America as much as everything else is. And these people who claim and hold on to their conservative identity are threatened by those messages being out there. They are threatened by different kinds of people who have different ideas, who are not themselves conservative, are being exposed, are being, depicted in front of a worldwide audience. They don't want different kinds of ideas to be spread out there because they know ultimately that they ain't gonna win.
Yeah.
Which is why some of them have even said that they want to just go straight to authoritarianism to make people agree with them. Well, doesn't that just tell you everything?
Yeah.
Jesus, man.
And then also, again, talking about like tearing down studios, they watch the Marvel movies and they're going like, oh, these movies suck now because of the whole go broke thing. They want to bring in women to the forefront, and that's all they want to focus on. And again, I don't see it. I noticed more women coming out, being more female superheroes coming out in these stuff, but like that's not what I'm seeing. That's why it's bad. I literally just said whatever Kevin Feige was doing now, he did that before, and guess what? He just got lucky in getting the right writers. The guys who wrote Captain America and Avengers: Infinity War, they were dealing with that, and they somehow just made great movies with it. It's just all luck. This whole studio system thing, like, huge chunk of it is just luck. Okay? The person walks in, someone says the right thing, or someone just makes the right movie that captures someone's attention. You know which one? It's not my favorite show ever or anything, but Smallville. You've heard of that show, right? It's like basically the origins of Superman. That one, the creator of it, he wanted to make like an origin story for Superman and all that, but someone told him, here's the thing though, the producer of the CW, I can't remember I don't know if it was the CW back then, whoever was running,
it would have been the CW or would have been the WB,
yeah, something like that, one of those, whoever was like making the decisions in picking shows, they told them, this person really likes high school dramas, make your show into that, and you'll guarantee your show will be greenlit. And it ran for 10 seasons. All fucking luck right there. And sometimes, yeah, if you're good, if you're a great writer or director, yeah, you'll keep getting more stuff. This is how we got The Good Place. The guy who made that show, he made Parks and Rec and a bunch of other stuff. And the network was just like, we need to fill a spot, do whatever you want. And that's how we got The Good Place, which is an amazing fucking show that we recommend. There's no secret formula to this. Someone just makes a good idea and they run with it. Sometimes they run with it too much, and it kind of like goes downhill after some time, which is kind of what's happening with Marvel. But yeah, there's just no secret formula to this, man.
Yeah. I'd also just throw in like there's so many different perspectives, and I always feel like conservatives act from a place of cancel culture. They just don't want to hear a different kind of take. Like I know Martin Scorsese, in finding out more information about him, he grew up wanting to be a priest because his background was in the Catholic Church. Like his family were deep devout Catholics. And, this is a man that in his filmography has depicted, the Osage people now in their culture, as well as Buddhism and the Dalai Lama and others. And I feel like in his movie, The Last Temptation of Christ, there was a big controversy over a misunderstanding of what it was. It was an adaptation of a book that in and of itself was a different version, kind of like a what-if story than what the Bible was saying. And the whole reason why Scorsese made that movie was because he wanted to get to know Jesus Christ better. He wanted to make a more relatable version of that person for modern day audiences. Who knows if any of the stuff that happens in the Bible even happened? I mean, it depends on your faith, right? I like to believe in otherworldly people out there that, sit above us and will grant us the the privilege of an afterlife for being good human beings. I'd love to believe that. But I also don't think that your belief of that should come at the expense or come at the suffering of those around you who do not share your beliefs or have a different interpretation or have a different religion than you. And I think in some ways we've become very sensitive. We as human beings have just become too sensitive and too entrenched in our divisions, and we can't get along anymore. And to me, one of the saddest things, to wrap this also with, you know, it was in Temptation of Christ, and I think it was that through line followed all the way to Killers of the Flower Moon, which is you can't really ever kill evil. Evil will always be in the world. It just takes different shapes as the centuries go on. It's an inevitability. And it's crushing to think that. Because we see evil every day. And it could be the evil that we see happening right now in atrocities being committed by right-wing extremists against civilians in the world. Or it could be the casual indifference that we see every day when homeless people are just killed by a hit-and-run situation happened in Calexico this week or last week. Or in the casual indifference of a school shooting. I work at a school. That could be me one day. Or it could be one of the kids. Even worse, it could be one of the kids who I teach. And then they would all be forgotten by the next day. It's, by the way, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid that will ever happen.
Right.
I'm just saying that that's an example of things that happen in this country every day that are horrible and sick and tragic, and we just forget about them. Because on some level, we want to forget about them. We want to go back into the comfort of that ignorance bliss mentality of like, we can carry on our lives. And for me, there are atrocities happening right now in the world, and I'm not saying I don't care, but I can't bring myself to give my headspace that attention because of my mental health. I know that the world is fucked right now. I know that this country is deeply fucked right now in so many different ways. And I know fundamentally they can't ever be fixed or resolved. And I can't let my mind linger on those things because then I can't live my life. You know? So I'm sympathetic to people wanting to remain sheltered and wanting to remain in that ignorance is bliss mentality. But you have to wonder what role we play in being complicit in the common, everyday, senseless tragedies that occur. And ultimately, what we as a people and we as a world are coming to because of this. So, and I'm not absolving myself of that. I'm definitely including myself in that as well. By the way, all of those are questions that his new movie deals with. So go see his new movie right now in theaters, Killers of the Flower Moon, and of course when it becomes available on Apple TV Plus. But it just goes to show you that film is really speaking to a lot of the challenges and speaking to a lot of the realities that we see in our lives. It's more than just entertainment. It is an art form, and oftentimes an art form that is in conversation with who we are as a people and what we are doing. Again, just a different perspective. And I think that is a much more, that conversation, I mean this in the bottom of my heart, that's coming from the most honest place I can be. And we can engage with that and we can talk about that. And we don't have to agree, but we can have a conversation, which is what ultimately is the best thing that cinema can do, is spark those conversations. But what we will not entertain are people who seek to exclude anyone that is not in their social class or their race group or in their gender identity, if they seek to exclude everybody else from that conversation, we're not going to include them and we're not going to entertain them. And we have to just be firm about that. We have to be honest about that too. That not everybody operates from a place of good faith. And that there are plenty of people. You know, I was thinking a lot of Nightmare Alley, the Del Toro movie, when I was watching Flower Moon, and how we are constantly surrounded by coyotes, wolves, people who are just there to make profit off of your dead carcass. Don't forget that. Because a lot of America and a lot of people in power throughout the vast history of this nation have been no better than the thugs that you've seen in Scorsese's movies. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's what he was trying to tell you the whole time. So I'm sorry if that went on a long tangent, but I think that's a nice way to close off a lot of the things that we've been talking about in these 3 hours. And I did not think that when we did this at the top of the show that this would last 3 hours.
Yeah.
And yet here we are.
We're always thinking it's gonna be shorter than we think, and then we just
Right.
somehow go out an extra hour.
Yeah, we're at this moment we're like a little less than half an hour away from being as long as the new Scorsese movie, which is hilarious to me. Anyway, you know, I want to thank you all for staying with us, and I also do want to apologize for not just the length of the show, but then also for the lack of podcasts there have been in recent weeks. I know that I've been doing my best to give you something on my own, but you know, we had the Ahsoka stuff and all of us have our own things going on, and Alexis literally flies out to Paris every weekend. Like literally she's gone every weekend doing something, and you know, like good for her, she's living her life, but she's never there on a weekend. She's always gone. So I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that she flies out to Paris. Like she has to have her own private jet at this point. Seriously, with the amount of miles that she is putting on and has been all these years. And I know particularly our own Peter Martinez is very much angry with her because of how much she leaves and travels, and he never gets to go anywhere. And of course, sympathetic to him, of course, because he is involved in a program that was seemingly conceived as a means to bring nothing but misery to those who are enrolled in it. So all those reasons just being put out there. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for listening. We appreciate any feedback you have on the YouTube page where this is uploaded, or on Castbox or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Again, available anywhere to listen to podcasts, usually on Sundays. And also be on the lookout for YouTube. And I know that one of the reasons that I've been aggravated that Alexis has been gone every weekend is because, well, there's one thing that we had talked about weeks ago about doing, which is a live reaction to Little Mermaid 23, but that seemingly can't happen if she's not in the room. And she so frequently has not been in the room. So we're still waiting for it. Because I say I'm excited to do it, but I know it's a movie that where it's like, oh God, I've been doing so good lately of avoiding bad movies. So.
Yeah.
But that would make for an excellent reaction if there ever was one.
For sure.
Those. So thank you, David, for being here. And I don't know if you have any last thoughts, if you wanted to say about, what we've been up to these last few weeks. I know it's been a little bit, inconsistent, but it's tough.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it is tough. I would love to have Peter on right now, and I was hoping to have him on because there's so much that he would want to say, not just with Scorsese, but with physical media and the state of Marvel. But he can't be here. So your thoughts, or any closing thoughts you have to say?
No, not really. I'm for sure busy too. Mostly it's just all this YouTube stuff going on. But yeah, it is what it is.
Basically, as Joe Pesci said in The Irishman, it's what it is. So thank you for being here on Red Spotlight. Stay under our spotlight for more content and more. And we will see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.